Live now. And all right, let's see. Should be, are we on? Yep, we're on. Okay, good to go.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I am Jenny Averly, the high school ELA content lead, and today I have two amazing high school English teachers with me. I have Emily Seals from Manual High School, who's going to present first to you on some authentic, meaningful ways to use reading in your classroom. And following her will be Rosie Bertles, who is an ESL teacher at Iroquois High School, who's going to share some great strategies with you and on choose your own adventure. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it right over to Emily and let her share these awesome strategies with you on how to make independent reading meaningful to your students.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Let me get this going here. Like Jenny said, I'm Emily Sales, and I'm an English teacher at DuPont Manual High School. What I have today to share is what I call creating meaningful connections, the relationship between essential standards, independent reading, and the world. Just a little background rationale for you. First, what I did is I asked students to find an independent reading novel and evaluate why they chose it. For my kiddos, I specifically asked students to choose a novel from the canon of American literature because I teach a junior English class. However, that could be adapted to really any content or grade level. Each of the weekly, what I call projects, are based off of different Kentucky academic standards, reading standards. And I wanted to create projects where students could take each of the standards and apply it both to their independent reading novel and to their lives right now by using different aspects of multimodal communication. By applying reading standards to both literature and life, I've seen students create really meaningful connections to the universality of each standard. So what happens is they learn that these standards don't just exist as a mechanism to evaluate literature, but they also can be used in response to life. The first project I did was dealing with setting and mood. And what I wanted to do is for students to see the relationship that an author's use of the description of setting has on the mood of the audience. So first what I did is I asked students to find passages from their independent reading novels where the author used descriptive details to both inform the reader about the setting as well as the mood it creates. So what students did then is they found pictures from the internet that they thought kind of resembled the setting, and then they would find passages from their independent reading novels. This particular example is from a student who is reading The Handmaid's Tale as her independent reading novel. So you can see that she finds a really good descriptive passage by Margaret Atwood. And then at the top, she says that the mood from that passage is bleak, which I agree with. After the students did 3 examples of this from their independent reading novel, looking and evaluating mood and setting and its relationship, what I then asked them to do was actually to flip that and turn it around on themselves. So what they did is they took pictures of different rooms around their house, and they then became the authors. And I asked them to write a very good descriptive passage about each picture that they took, and they had to upload it to my classroom and then decide on what the mood was that these setting description details created. So this particular student took a picture of her bedroom, as you can see, and it's a very organized bedroom for a teenager. And she said that the mood was peaceful, which I agree with. My next project was characters in quarantine. For this assignment, I wanted students to explore the nuances of characterization of the characters from their novel, but in a flipped kind of modern way. So what I asked them to do was to suppose the characters were living in quarantine in 2020 and had access to social media. We've all been spending a lot of time on it. So what would their characters be doing in their free time? Would they be gardening? Would they be cooking? Would they be reading? Students then designed Instagram pages to demonstrate how these independent reading novel characters would spend time in isolation. I also asked them to write paragraphs that supported their choices that use textual evidence of characterization. So this example comes from a student who's reading Little Women. You can see on the right that she's created an Instagram page for Jo March. And on the left, she validates the choices that she made. You know, Jo's not really afraid of storms. She's going to use this time to write and to explore the world. Whereas her sister Beth, who's more of a homebody, is, you know, using this time here for housework. And my student obviously kind of validates these choices with textual evidence from the book. The next assignment that I have is a literary device soundtrack, and my students were really excited by this one. They love music. So what I had students do is to create a double-sided soundtrack where side A were song choices that were based upon their independent reading novel, focused just on that IR novel, and side B were song choices that focused on their life right now. You know, I asked them, for side B, what are the songs that you are listening to during this time period that matter to you? So each side was to have 5 songs that reflected different literary devices: mood, figurative language, theme, tone, and conflict. So what this example is a student, I think she's reading In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. And for side A, for song number 2, which was supposed to explore figurative language, she finds a song that has rich figurative language of metaphors, metaphors for guilty consciences. And she posts the song right there. For side B, also for figurative language, but this one had to be about her life, she gave an example of a Frank Ocean song and talks about the metaphor of losing yourself because everything around you is changing. So she was able to take that standard and apply it both to her book as well as to her life. Another example is dealing with theme. She has a song here about her independent reading novel In Cold Blood, and one of the many themes of the book being mental illness. And she finds a song that she sings speaks to that theme. Similarly, with side B, which is theme as it's appropriate to her life right now, she chooses a song with the theme of empowerment and picking yourself back up again and dusting yourself up and kind of getting through the tough times. Just some challenges I wanted to talk briefly about and how I've been dealing with them. And obviously, NTI is an ongoing process for all of us. So we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak. But one challenge I had was maintaining Google Meets with online sessions. I think that face-to-face contact with students is really important. So what I do is I record meetings and I post it to Google Classroom. That way students who might be working or might not have access to technology at the time can go back later and watch the lesson. Another thing I've been doing was, or a challenge I've had is designing lessons that aren't necessarily new material, but rather review of previously taught standards. And using these reading essential standards as a foundation for my assignments kind of gave root to this. So we're reviewing what we've already done and using it in a more meaningful way rather than teaching something completely new. Also, allowing students to select their own independent reading novel kind of gave them choice and currency. So I'm not assigning them a book, but they're taking it from what they have. I also mentioned that Audible has free subscriptions for students right now, so a lot of them have been listening to books on Audible. Finally, I think the biggest hurdle that I've had that a lot of teachers can relate to is just simple student engagement. I want my students to engage in this time and to do the work and find meaning in it and not be stressed out. Again, giving students the choice for independent reading novels has helped students get more engaged. I've always used independent reading in my classroom. It's kind of a foundation to what I do with everything. So giving students the agency to choose their own books kind of helps to engage them. Also, designing lessons that encourage creativity and utilize multiple mediums and modalities of communication. For me, this has been kind of a creative time, and I want to assign work to my students that encourages creativity and utilizes different modes of communication than maybe what we do in school, which is just simple reader response and essays. And then finally, and I think this might be the most poignant way that I've kind of approached engaging students, is I've been designing assignments that give students the opportunity to interpret this time period in a meaningful and kind of safe, protected way. So by taking standards and relating it to their books and then to their lives, they're able to kind of make sense of this time period in a safe space and to be able to respond to it in a meaningful way. I just wanted to show my contact information. So just in case anybody has any questions, if they want to reach out, I have my information right there. And thank you all for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Jenny.
Thanks, Emily. Great ideas and strategies to give kids choice, to get them engaged in their learning. What I love about what you do is you're sort of sneaking in the standards, and students may not even know it because it's so relevant and connected to them. So great ideas. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Rosie now, who's going to talk to us about students and writing and learning in an online platform. So here, it's all yours, Rosie.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see you. Hope everything's going well for you. Just going to go ahead and hit a couple of settings here, get my closed captions on. I started last year with this idea of using choose your own adventure stories for my students. It's really a dynamic way for students to be able to engage with their own writing processes. I do teach English as a second language, and I've got sophomore students this year. So the beginning of this semester, we had started on our choose your own adventure stories. I started by showing them an app where they could choose where the story heads next. Also, I pulled out some of my books from the shelf and let them read through and choose where the adventure would go next, just for an idea, so that they would know we're used to opening up a book and reading it from cover to cover. And choose your own adventure means the reader gets the choice in where the story goes and what they read next. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and show you this exemplar story. This is from last year. I just want to show you a finished product of my students from last year. And then I'll show you what my students are doing and the process that they're at right now for their adventure project while we're on NTI. So this is a story of a shark. What I do with my students is I have them in groups of 2 or 3. And the first thing they do is write 2 pages. Actually, they type 2 pages double spaced in Google Docs, creating a joint story. So the 2 of them together or the 3 of them write the story very creatively and document it on Google Docs. Once they're done with the joint story, so these first 4 slides are the joint story that this pair did together. Once they're done with the joint story, I have them make a copy of the story. That way they have their own permanent record of the joint story. And then they go ahead and create a middle of the story and 2 endings. So once this project is finished, the reader actually will have 4 different avenues or paths of a story that they can take. And then after the story is written, we go ahead and put it into the Google Slides and do the hyperlink. So here we go with one of the students' paths. So he chose to write about 10 more sharks coming to the beach. This is the middle of the story. And then this is the end of the first story, or I'm sorry, the end of the middle. And then we jumped to this path. I decided to go on this path. And here is the end of the first story. And then they loop back. Google Slides is great for being able to do the choose your own adventure. You look back to where the reader has a choice once again of what path they want to take for the story. And then I also had them do final credits because just like in a movie, you want to thank your people for watching. So with reading our stories, we want to thank them for reading our story. So that is a finished product. How did we get there? You might be asking yourself. So I'm going to jump back to this presentation, turn my captions back on. So with NTI, like I said, most of my students this semester had finished their joint story and the middle part of their story. Some had finished their endings, but some had not. So the first thing that we did for NTI was to connect through Google Meet and for me to be able to give instruction that way. They finished up their stories, and then I would record my sessions, my teaching sessions, showing them what they needed to do next. We have about 10 more days in this semester, and I've got, I think, 10 projects that are nearing completion. So I'm not going to click on these hyperlinks right now, but you'll have access to this. So this hyperlink will show you how to create hyperlinks within your Choose Your Own Adventure. This one will show you a really easy way to insert background pictures. That first hyperlink to a slide will take you to this video. I just wanted to show you in case you don't want to write well, my students ended up writing a 6-page double-spaced Google story by the time that they were finished. So maybe you don't want to take that much time next year when we start back into either NTI or teaching in the classroom. So you can do very simple stories. So you see this one, we have almost 2 sentences. One day, a strange boy called Matt was exploring his attic. He saw an unusual box. So there's 2 choices here. He could choose to open the box. If he does that, it'll actually take you to slide number 3 here on the left. If he chooses to go back downstairs, then the reader would go to slide number 4 here on the left, and you would just continue your story on that way. So that could be a much simpler, less entailed, less time-consuming way to have them reading. Why do I have my students doing Choose Your Own Adventure stories? What I found is that allowing them to have a choice of the story that they're going to write and the path to complete the stories, plus using the technology, I think it's really cool to be able to share on the Google Doc and to watch the other person type. So it just brings together a lot of different avenues to get students invited to, engaged in, and excited with the whole writing process. So right here, I'm going to show you pretty much the simplicity of how we make these slides. Once you have your story written, you just have to type it in here, which most of us know how to do. So once upon a time, there was a little girl who went to visit her grandmother. And then she saw a wolf. If we had more time, which we don't, I would make that font larger. I would choose one of the fancier fonts. I just want to show you how easy this is. So to do a background picture, you just pick background, choose image. She's seeing a wolf, so I'm going to go ahead and pick this mangy looking wolf right here. Just going to insert it. And then it pops up right there. And then to do the hyperlinks, you just go insert, shape. And then I like this bevel right here. So you pull it down right here, do a right click on it. You do link, slides in this presentation. I'm going to take this one to the next. Obviously, this is not a story, so it won't go to the next part of the story. And then you just type your words in here, and I'm going to say, she runs away. And then I need another hyperlink. You can change the color inside the shape. There's all kinds of different things. I've had students do very creative things with their hyperlinks. Some of them have a little bit more time to polish their projects. So we go link. This one will go to slide number, see, we're on slide 4, so we're going to go down to slide number 6. I'm going to apply that. And then I'm going to put my words in here. Maybe this one, she is going to hide. And then if I go back to present, click on this one, takes me to this page. And oops, wrong slide. I go back here, present. The other one will take me to the other part of my presentation. So that gives you an idea of how easy it is. And obviously, once we model it for the students, and sometimes it's difficult. One of the difficulties with NTI is the fact that I can't point to the spot on the keyboard and tell them do this. So one of the neat things about Google Meet is that I can share my screen and show them what I'm talking about, or they can share their screen and I can give them verbal cues as far as what they need to do in order to get to the right place on the keyboard to make it do what they want it to do. So some of the other challenges, as has been mentioned, I do meet with my students. I chose 2 class meetings, one at 11 o'clock in the morning for those that may have to work in the afternoon or have family obligations, and one at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which tends to be the more heavily attended meeting. I do record those sessions, so that way they can see my teaching, go back and stop the recording and listen again or do the things that I'm showing them to do. I post that in Google Classroom along with the week's assignment so they know where to find it. One thing that's really important in using technology is to model being a lifelong learner. To learn alongside the students, we don't have to be the experts. I was a little hesitant to do this at first when I started integrating the computers and technology more into my classroom, but it really is empowering for students when they discover how to do something. A lot of times I won't have time in the classroom to figure out how to do something, and I'll just tell them, Google it, and then you show me when you're done. And it's the same with NTI. I have students who have figured out how to do graphics on their Google Slides and various things that have been really exciting for them. And it empowers them when they know that I'm affirming their learning. I've also done private sessions with students. Sometimes they'll stay on after our class meeting, and then I can help them one-on-one or with their small group. And like I said, they can share their screen and I can guide them. The great thing about the Google Suites is the ability to collaborate on Google Docs and Google Slides. I think we should have a chance. I'll show you the progress of my students under NTI and the way that I've placed comments along the side to encourage them, let them know what they need to do and how they need to do that. You can also see who is doing what. If you look at the file version history, it'll tell you who wrote what, so you know who's doing the work with that collaboration. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is basically the path. How would you get started with a choose your own adventure story? If you have younger kids or students who are newer to writing, or you don't want to take as much class time with students, I would say that on this left-hand side, this would probably be 5 teaching days that you could get through this choose your own adventure slide if they were tech savvy and writing savvy. So first slide is your title. Second slide starts your story. You can specify the number of sentences, and then you offer 2 story path options. First option would go to slide 3, where you would continue the story and then ask 2 more options there. Slide 4 would continue from second path on slide 2. Sounds a little complicated, but if you just take it one step at a time and students take it one step at a time, it really is dynamic. And then slides 5 to 8, you would continue on to the end of your story, and then students would need to add the background and the hyperlink. On the right-hand side is what I've done with my students. The students collaborate on a joint story beginning using Google Shared Docs. It was easier. I will probably do this again next year. Hopefully I'll be able to meet my students before we go to NTI. Because I think collaboration between them, if they don't know each other, might be a little bit more difficult, but it might be a way to give them that social connection, that emotional and academic support if they work together on a story. And they can do a Google Meet also between the 2 of them to talk about the story. Students add their own story option at the end of the joint story. They make a copy of the story for themselves. They write their own middle and 2 endings, and then they collaborate on the Google Slides. When I was in class in person, I had the students put their own story on the slides in the path that I determined for them. I told them which part of the story needed to go. But because it's a little bit more complicated when they're on NTI and working from home, I went ahead and took their finished stories and put it on the slides, and then told them which slides that were theirs and what pattern it followed. So you have different options there. And then the students add the background pictures and the hyperlinks and look to make it appealing. Like I said, this on the left would probably be 5 teaching days if you had tech and writing savvy students. If you had a short story and you had tech or writing savvy students, it might be 8 teaching days, and it might be 10 if you had a short story and they were challenged both with technology and with writing. And you could just make it as complicated and as advanced as you wanted to, depending on the time frame that you want to dedicate to the writing. Here's my contact information. If you want to find out more or hear more about what I'm doing or how I did it or different issues, there's always issues with technology. I found just Googling ideas helps me answer my questions. It's like I have just a couple seconds more, so I'm just going to very quickly show you. This is where my students are now in their project. This is the beginning. This is the joint story that they wrote before we went to NTI. I have one student out of this group of 3 who's got his hyperlinks in here correctly. So here's the middle part of his story. And then he's got his 2 options. We're going to go with Jay gets power and then continue on. But you can see there's some things here. He has 2 number 5 that he needs to take off. And then eventually they'll get down to the bottom of the story and do the credits. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, give it back to Jenny.
All right. Thank you to Rosie and Emily for sharing these strategies. We had some good comments going on in the chat. The last one talked about how you showed student work and you made it so that teachers know what to do in their classroom, which I think is always important. Like we always have to make it a next step so teachers could take something and they could drop it in and know how to do it. And you all did that and gave some great student examples as well. So thank you all for another great presentation. We'll be back tomorrow at 12:30 to do one final presentation of this. So if you were watching and you have colleagues that you think would benefit from these strategies, please encourage them to join us tomorrow at 12:30. And Russ, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you.
All right. Hey, I am Russ Hockenberry, Zone 3 Elementary School Digital Innovation Leader. And thanks for joining us today. We had a bit of a technical snafu when we started this morning, but everything is good now. And so this is the first time you're hearing from me. We are very excited to have this session with us today. And this session includes a kindergarten teacher, a 5th grade teacher, and a STEAM teacher, a special area teacher. So we are well represented in elementary schools today. We've got with us Sarah Brock, who's a kindergarten teacher from St. Matthew's Elementary. We've got Amberly Nunn, who is a 5th grade teacher at Dunn Elementary. And we've got Rebecca Ferguson, who is a STEAM teacher at Alex Kennedy Elementary. And so excited to have these NTI rock stars on today. And I kind of just asked our S-Stills, I was like, tell me some people in your school who are rocking NTI. And they basically threw these names at me and they were like, these people they're killing it. These are the people you need to have on your show. And so thank you to the S-Stills for recommending these people. I also was looking around Twitter and I saw these people on Twitter and just the amazing love they were getting on Twitter. I'm like, these people need to be on our show and need to be talking about what they're doing during NTI. And they can benefit all of us. So good morning. You guys, all of your mics are muted right now. So if you want to unmute your mics, if you're ready to go here. And so what we'll do is we'll start off with Sarah Brock, who is our kindergarten teacher from St. Matthew's Elementary. And so Sarah, good morning, first off.
Good morning. Good
All
morning.
right. And so if you could just talk to us about what you've been doing with NTI, if you have some slides you'd like to share with us, that'd be great as well.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Russ. Thanks for having me. And good morning to everybody and welcome on this rainy day. So thanks for joining and tuning in. I'm going to share my screen here and show you my slides that I've got. If I can find the button here. Okay, Russ, my button's not here to share my screen. There it is.
Oh, there it is. Do you see your up in the top corner, your 3 dots?
Yeah.
Next to the cogwheel? So
Yes.
you should see share screen on that.
Okay.
Do
It
you have
looked
that?
different than when I was in my Google Meets.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
share
Thanks for your
screen.
help.
Perfect.
Okay. I'm good, right? Everybody can see it?
Yep. And
Okay.
then you're going to go to present. So you're going to go to view present or present. And then do you
Okay.
know where your closed captions are?
Captions.
Yep. And then, yep. You can click hide on that too. See where it says hide?
Hit hide.
Yep. And then, yep. So hit hide there.
Okay.
And then see where, click on that little down arrow next to captions.
Okay.
Yep. And then make the text size on those captions large.
Large.
Excellent. All
That
right.
work?
You're good to go.
Okay, cool. All right, so like I said, my name's Sarah Brock, and I'm from St. Matthews Elementary. So thanks for having me here. The first thing I just wanted to show you is kind of like my workspace items. So everybody, was in a hurry to figure out what to bring home. This is what I grabbed. I grabbed my Jan Richardson book, some Jan materials, like a hundreds chart for math, a numbers bond, because that's what we were working on. The phonics dance, we were doing our chunks, and then like my mini erase board, dry erase board, along with obviously all like my modules and stuff like that. So this is what I brought home. This is just a snapshot of basically what I use every week.
So that's interesting too, because like what you see is like you see a lot of people like they're set up in like a corner of their kitchen, or they're set up like in a basement. So like we all had to scramble to find a space to put our stuff. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so I just ran in and just grabbed these, because at first I was envisioning, like all these small groups and working with kids or whatever. So I just grabbed things that we basically work with. And then luckily I have a basement, so I set up shop down there. So this is what it looked like. But with this stuff, I know everybody's, house and family life is different. I have 2 little kids. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. So live lessons and interactions right in the moment are hard for me and my family, so what I mainly need to do is create videos and send that videos to my students. So I do this at night, when my kids are asleep, or if my husband's home for a few minutes, I run downstairs and create a video. So my main work with NTI is creating videos. So here's this next slide right here is just a shot of an example of this week's reading work, just one of the slides. So what I've done is I just create a video about a skill. With guided reading, there's people who are using like the Pioneer Valley digital libraries, Epic Books, little libraries. So we do that and still send little kids books. But I was trying to think, how can we get to the masses? So we picked the little comprehension box set, the Jan stuff. And then I just created videos with those strategies. So like if I click this one right here, you'll see I did one just with tracking characters' feelings. So that's what did this week. And then kids just pick a book from their house, stuff that they hopefully already have around the house. Or I said, they could find one online if they didn't have a bunch of books at home. Just using Post-it notes or paper that they have. On the next slide, give the kids a feelings poster that they can use. So basically what they had to do is they had to track characters' feelings, which is from the Jan Comprehension box set, and mark it as they read, and then use this sentence and create a little sentence. So this little girl wrote, "Lovely bunny felt sad because she ripped mama's dress." And then here's just kids in action, what they were doing. They had their book, they had their Post-it notes tracking the characters' feelings, and then they just shared that with me, a picture. I use Class Dojo, so either via Class Dojo or through email. So here's just what kids have sent me. Another video, some videos that I created following, what our district calls the Jan plan, was dictated sentences. So the lower levels, the kids who are in like those pre-A, emergent, early lessons, they do what's called a dictated sentence. So the teacher reads a sentence and the kids write. So you can see one of my little students here watching my video and practicing writing the sentence. So I did it a little bit different than you would do in the classroom. Obviously, in the classroom, you'd read the sentence, write it, and then you're going back and analyzing and seeing things like, are they using their best guess spelling, finding chunks, like in this word, she did CH for chips. This higher level was I modeled the breaking apart strategy and then the silent E rule. So basically to change for this NTI, this new way of life, I modeled the strategy first. And then the kids wrote it, and then I went back and analyzed. And I would tell them, like on the silent E rule one, I'm like, all right, there's 4 words with silent E. Hope you can find them, just to make them more successful and kind of help them. So like if you hit this one, the breaking apart one, this was like another video. As usually I'm in like my sweatshirt. That's my go-to work.
You ready? Let's do it together.
So then I would just model a part.
Let's do it again.
And so they can pause this. That's the best part about this is they can pause this and
Right.
And go at their own pace. And you're really like a Jan plan guru, I think, because like people, I mean, I've seen on Twitter, it's like you have like people come to your classroom from the district and
Yeah.
like all around the district and watch you teach this Jan plan. So it's awesome that you brought that into this NTI world.
Thanks, Russ. Yeah, I mean, that was my main thing, I wanted to bring back. How could we bring that Jan to the classroom? That's more of the whole group, atmosphere rather than just, like I said, with the small reading groups. That's kind of can be difficult or tricky to have. Or if if every kid can't get on and meet with you, what can we do to reach as many kids as we can? So, yeah,
Awesome.
I've had kids or students and teachers come in and watch and do the Jan plan. So it's something I'm really passionate about and excited about, as you can tell.
Awesome.
But thanks, Russ, for saying that. A lot of times in my video, I'll pause and say, okay, get your pencil. If you need, pause my video, go get your supplies. Or I'll ask a question and then kind of give wait time and let them, answer in their house, just to kind of make it a little bit more interactive. So yeah, the dictated sentences, the reading strategies, those were kind of like the main thing with the Jan plan. Next, moving into writing, I really collaborated with my friend here, Josh Frank. There's his Twitter handle right there. We worked together a lot on creating writing and writing options. And then that dictated sentence that I showed you before, that was part of their writing work. So they found that there each week. And then we had just kind of options with writing. We try to utilize a template and give them a template, as you can see here. So if parents do have access to printer, or if they don't, we would just say, hey, you can easily draw this, right? It's just a bunch of boxes, just to give them that visual. As you can tell on the next slide, most people don't even use those templates. They just use what they have. You can see all the different modes that they were able to do. Like this little girl right here wanted to type it, which was great. I found this hysterical. She said, once upon a time I swam in the ocean, I met a shark. I know, you probably thought something bad would happen, but nothing bad happened to me. So it's just really funny to see their work. So this girl typed, she just used paper she had.
That was a kindergartner type that?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, my kindergarten friends. Yeah.
Right.
She's fabulous. Yeah. she's rocking it, as you can tell. But then, we have all different levels, right? We even have our kid over here is using the lines to help his strategy to stretch out his words. So it's just really neat to see all the different ways that students create from, just something simple that you've given them. The next set of videos that I did, of course, was math. And so these were just kind of the topics that we were doing, word problems, and then I just gave like a practice to go with it. Once again, I just made it easy practice. So if they couldn't print, they could just, and most didn't, even if they had a printer, they just kind of copied and like drew the number bond or, made a hundreds chart for the numbers. And one of the favorite ones that they did was this one. It was called Subtraction Smash. And so they got to play this little game where they had Play-Doh, and then anytime they took it away, they smashed the Play-Doh balls. So that was a big hit. Once again, trying to find something that students have in their house. Lots of people have Play-Doh. And then I said, if you didn't, get crayons or something that you can utilize just to subtract them and just to play some games with. So there's all those videos linked there. Here's just the students in action. We did the cube strategy for word problems. So I modeled that in one of the videos. And here's a little girl, practicing it. And then here's another student watching the video, pausing it, and then doing the subtraction smash with the Play-Doh. So that was a good one. They had a lot of fun with that. Obviously, try to do different things, some whole group, some small group. So this over here, one of my kids' favorite games is Sorry, which is a bunch of popsicle sticks with either word wall words or math facts or whatever. And then 2 sticks have Sorry, and we pull the stick out. And if they read it, they get to keep it. And if they pull out a Sorry stick, then they have to put all their sticks back in the bucket. So it's a game we used to play at school. So I just made it at home. And then we've been playing it like in small group together. So this is me playing with one of my students. And you can probably not see it, but over here, these boys have their hands over their head because they were mad. Word work. This is where we do all of our work in Google Classroom. So I'm going to go through this quickly because I know I'm running out of time. They just drag word wall words. They drag the letters to build the words. This, I made a sound and they put the letters in the box. I read a word like cat and they would build the word. This one, we did some consonant blends where they dragged pictures to build words. And then finally, we just did some fun hands-on stuff like science and social studies, which was optional. Here we did clouds and weather, and they did a little weather thing, and then they built some clouds. So just trying to find things they can do at home and just to make it interactive.
Excellent. And so thank you for sharing today. Lots of different resources in there. These resources will be linked in the virtual training support schedule along with Amberly and Rebecca's resources shortly. Not right now, but they will be linked shortly. So you'll have access to these resources as well. Thank you guys for sharing on that. And so, the thing about this is Sarah, you've got a lot of fans. Allison Heinrich says that she's a big fan of you. She had you,
last year.
Yeah, she had her daughter last. And then Josh Frank is here in the chat. He's watching
Frank.
as well.
Thanks for your help, Frank.
And then Nicole Medina says that you've been rocking it for a long time. So
Hey,
you
Nicole.
lots of fans out there. So excellent,
Thanks for
Sarah.
sharing.
Thanks for sharing. All right,
No problem.
on to our next presenter, Amberly Nunn from Dunn Elementary. You're a 5th grade teacher. And we get to learn what have you been doing with during NTI with your students?
Well, I am obviously a 5th grade teacher, and I departmentalize with my teammates. I'm the math teacher, and I departmentalize with reading and social studies. So while I'm presenting, I'm going to be shouting out their names a lot and just giving credit to everyone who has helped make this possible.
Awesome. Perfect. All right, we're ready to go. So if you want to start sharing your screen, go for it.
All right. Let's see. Does it work?
Yeah, you're sharing, and then you're just going to go to your presentation.
Awesome. All right.
And then you're going to get a present.
So I don't have
just go to present. There you go.
presenter view.
Yep, presenter view. And then you're going to turn your closed captioning on. You can hit the hide button. See where it says stop sharing hide. Hit hide.
Yeah. Oh, here's the captions.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, turn your captions on. Oh, uh-oh. All right, tell you what. Let's just X up. You're fine. Just hit the hide button there. And then you're good to go. You can just start talking.
Okay. Let's start talking.
Yep.
My weekly plan for NTI is very consistent. It's predictable. I have a very wide range of learners. I teach around 90 5th graders with a huge range of abilities. And so one thing that's been really cool about NTI is that I've really tested my differentiation assignment. And I'll show you some samples. So the week will start the week before around day, where I fill out a NTI reference form, and a collaborative Google form that I fill out. Well, not a Google form, but a collaborative doc that I fill out with my teammates. And so we will just write what we're doing in that area, and then our attendance clerk, Devin Finney, will post it to the NTI plan. After that, I'll record a video of myself teaching a lesson. The lessons are on one Google slide that's posted to the classroom. So they're working Monday through Friday on that same Google slide. And at the end of the week, they press turn in, and that's where I can officially go back in and give them all feedback on their work. The cool thing is that some kids like to do all of the math on the first couple of days. They turn it in by Tuesday, and then I can give them some really good feedback, and they can go back in and fix what they need to work on, or they can call me. Kids have my cell phone number. They text me, and I'll meet them on a Google Meet. We'll FaceTime, and whatever it takes to get that content through. I meet every day with Julie Dahl, who is my co-teacher. She's amazing. We meet every day for an hour on Google Meet. We open it up to any kiddo that needs help, wants help. We usually have around 30 kids on there every day. Many of them are the same kiddos, but some of them will just come and get help on the day that they need it. So they're in and out of the Google Meet as they maybe for the Thursday, they only need help with a warm up. So they'll come the first half of the lesson, do the warm up with me, and then leave. I'll show you what that looks like. As soon as the kids turn in their work, probably around Thursday or Friday, I'll give feedback on under the speaker notes for every student on every slide. And it's time consuming, but well worth it. And then I communicate progress with my team student. So I just want to show you a sample of one of my lessons. Let's see. This is, I am not tech savvy, and I'll be the first to admit that. But this is the lessons that I was doing before my teammate introduced me to Bitmojis. So this was kind of when I was starting out, just wanting to get the content across. So I left my two, I don't want to say most complicated math concepts for this time, which is multiplying and dividing fractions. So my mind automatically went to, how do I scaffold that? How do I communicate that in a lesson? And so it's a lot of video, a lot of visual models, a lot of conceptual understanding, and what the kids have reciprocated to me. So it'll start with a reminder for this week. I do a warm up, which is a previous skill taught, and have the day's lesson. So their warm up for this week in particular was operations with decimals. So they'll get their warm up. And then I also give them a reminder to watch the videos if they choose not to go live with me every day, since we're learning a new topic. So then it gets really predictable. They have and they can type their response, but if they type, they have to explain their thinking. They can link their Jamboard. They can take a picture of their work, how they can really up to them. And I have some examples of that I'll show you.
And so just real quick, Amberly, were you using Jamboard before NTI?
No.
Yeah, so it's just been the NTI discovery. Yeah, that's amazing.
Jamboard has math NTI what it is for me. If it weren't for Jamboard, some of these kids wouldn't have really been able to show me their conceptual understanding. I mean, it's been amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is great. And I have some samples of some work that kids have done through Jamboard. Love it for math, especially drawing the visual models. And so after the warm up, it'll go to their core lesson, and the structure of the week is also very predictable. Monday is going to be more of that deep understanding, conceptual, and then they're going to respond about their learning of the concept. And then Tuesday, it gets more into working with the visual models, and slowly release that to Friday, problem solving through a performance task. So for this week in particular, they watched my YouTube video, and then they had a Padlet response, and I'll show you in a minute some of their responses. And then before I discovered the whole Bitmoji, I would put like a funny meme in there. That's where I am on my technology. And then they will also watch a Learn Zillion lesson, which I'm a huge fan of Learn Zillion. And this follows through what they did in class, what they already knew, what they learned, and what questions they have. Very quickly, you have your warm up, and then your lesson, warm up, and then your lesson. And it's very predictable, and I did that on purpose. But going back to this is some of the samples of student work. I love that they are able to really explain words through writing, their mathematical reasoning. This is for a wide range of learners. I have challenges. So if you feel really good, how can we take that a step further? This is student work, a student that uploaded a picture, answered the question, and did the challenge.
Cool.
This is Google form that they had to fill out, giving examples from a rap video that I posted. how does drawing a visual model make sense? So just a lot of means of explaining your thinking. Khan Academy is something that I use to see how they're doing independently. It kind of helps me gauge their mastery of the concept. And then this is a performance task with sample student work. There's that Jamboard right there that a kiddo did.
Very cool. Thank you, Amberly. That's awesome. Like, so you just showed a lot of different resources there. You use Google Forms, you use Jamboard, you're using Khan Academy, Learn Zillion. So lots of different ideas for people to take away from this. So we've seen kindergarten, we've seen fifth grade. And like I said, these resources will be linked in the support channel soon, probably before the end of the day today. If you're looking at there, we have people asking questions. Danielle Waller was here supporting you, by the way, Miss Nunn. So I'm going to jump to Rebecca now. Rebecca is a special area teacher, a STEAM teacher at Alice Kennedy, and she took over from my really good friend Aaron Bloomer, who, man, you talk about a rock star teacher. Aaron Bloomer, that's a tough act to follow, but Miss Ferguson, she is up to the task. So hello, Miss Ferguson, and you're muted. So if you'd unmute your mic, there you go. Perfect.
Yeah. And actually right now I'm still teaching third grade for this year, but next year I'm going into STEAM for, yes, Erin was there and yeah, she is. She is a great teacher. We went through the Bellarmine STEAM project together when we started Alex Kennedy and she came. So yes, she is.
Awesome.
Very, very good. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
Let's see if we good?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about, as I said, I am teaching third grade right now, but what I'm going to be talking about today is with the technology. So a lot of how I organize my classwork for the week is similar to the other teachers that presented. But one thing that I know has been a struggle with some teachers is things to do during Google Meet or ways to get the kids to collaborate since we aren't together. So that's what I'm going to talk about today is how I get them to collaborate and how I create those resources. So I'm going to talk about creating collaborative games with drag and drop manipulatives. And also using this tech skill to create resources across the content areas. So again, creating, sharing, how to share the links so that they are able to get to that file and collaborating using it in Google Meet. So one of the things that I've done that was really successful this year was, since NTI started, is creating game boards. And I use Google Drawings to create game boards. That's something that I didn't use a lot in previous years. But earlier this year, I realized how easy it is to create resources, anything really, so much easier than Word. Using drawings, like we think about drawings, but even text, creating worksheets that they can interact with.
Drawings is one of my favorite tools. It is so underutilized. So I love that you're using drawings.
Yes, I never realized how much easier it is even to just create things, when you're doing layouts, because I'm like, I want it to be all even, and you're trying to adjust everything. It is so easy in drawings. So when I'm creating game boards and things, I use shapes to create all of the graphics. So this is, just put it out there, this is where I was creating a Connect 4 for the kids to play together. So I just used a square and then I used circles. Whenever I get all of my circles, just a time saver, I group them together and then I use copy and paste a lot. So I'm not just dragging each circle. I group them together and then I just copy and paste.
Yep.
After I created the game board, like for Connect 4, then I just put my text boxes in for my directions, anything that I want the students to have. And then I save this as a ping image. So that's how I save it. And it kind of locks everything in and it makes the background transparent. So then it comes up as a white background. So if I'm creating worksheets or something, then it has the white background there. Now, after I do that, when I create on drawings, I go into slides. That's another thing that I use constantly, Google Slides. So I click on background and then I upload my ping file that I saved in Google Drawings as the slide on my background. And that locks everything in so the students can't change anything or move anything. So if you were creating any kind of answer document that you want them to do, that locks it in so that they can't edit any of those files or any of the images. Creating game pieces or drag and drop movable parts, I do the same thing. I just use shapes. So for this Connect 4, I just use circles. I made them blue or whatever colors you would like for each of the students that are going to be interacting. And then I go to custom and I make them transparent so that when they're moving them around, they can see them or you can see what's behind them. And I just repeat that for everything. And again, Control V to paste once I copy something saves a lot of time. Same thing for the red.
Or Control D, duplicate, actually. Control D is another thing to use there.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm just like, so cool, learning something. Now, whenever I share the link, so when I create something that I want the kids to collaborate on at the same time, then I do share and I put share with others, but I make sure that I put anyone with the link because that's been something for the kids that are on their tablets. If they're logged into a parent's account, it just saves of them not being able to get in, like saving time. So anyone with the link, it'll say can view, but make sure you change it to edit. So then everyone can be editing at the same time. So I make sure that I change it to can edit. After I've created everything, when I'm in my Google Meet, so this is an example of my class when we were playing these games. I made a checkers, Connect 4, tic-tac-toe, which is actually their favorite and very easy. But after I do that, I just paste the link to that document that's set to everyone can edit into the Meet. So the students that are in the Meet, they just click on the document and then it pops up. Everyone's in there at the same time. And I'm able to see, I tell the students normally which card I want them to go to, but I can see who's on each card. I can watch them in real time moving their pieces. I play with students, I switch around from card to card, and they really love that. They're like, I want to play you next. They really, and they love when they win. They like to beat me. So, but that's a way to collaborate. So then we are all on that same card and they feel like they're actually still part of school, doing these partner games together and talking to one another. Another thing that I did that the students actually liked is I shared a copy of the games like tic-tac-toe and the checkers with them as like a force for them to make a copy because a lot of them wanted to play with their siblings. So that they weren't editing the file that I had created, I had shared with them, I erase edit. This is how you do a forced copy. If you erase everything that's after this last slash, and you put copy, then that forces them to make a copy. So it's not going to change anything else on your document. They make a copy in their drive. And then I had several students that are playing tic-tac-toe with their siblings at home on their iPads or their Chromebooks. If they don't have things at home, it gives them something that they can do. So just some other ideas across content areas. So using the skill of building and the drag and drop pieces, I had trivia races with the horses for Derby, bingo cards, like where the drag and drop of bingo. I call out the numbers for multiplication. They play bingo. ELA, making words. So I saw someone else in the presentation had something similar. So doing partner making words. So they type their names, they have their letter bank, and they take turns. Making the biggest sum. So using it in math. And again, just that collaboration of having a partner to work with. Collaborative writing. So writing a comic of a student fills in scene 1, the next student 2. And then it can continue on as you learn, because on this one, roll a product, I wrote a script to add in where you can click for your dice. So you click and then it tells you what you've wrote. So those are some of the ways that I just get kids to collaborate by building things that they're able to drag and drop and work with one another on.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Your principal, Patrick Savori, actually joined us in the chat. So that's awesome. We had a principal join us today. So he said you're going to be a rock star next year in the STEAM lab. So great to have you guys. You know, this session, I knew it was going to be good, and all three of you brought like an amazing energy and like just a wealth of resources and knowledge. So I feel like I really had the best of representative of every level here. So thank you guys so much for joining us today, and I appreciate you. Thank you. All righty, so now we are on to our 10 o'clock show, and our 10 o'clock show is going to be it's celebrating conceptual understanding in the primary classroom, primary math classroom, actually. So hello, who's going to be sharing today?
Andrea will be sharing.
All right, Andrea.
Okay. All right, I'll drive if that's okay. Can we introduce ourselves really quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'm Andrea Higdon. Thank you guys so much for being here and all the innovative ways. I love listening to the end of that presentation and how we're finding ways to connect with kids with technology through NTI and the journey of all that we've learned. I'm here with 4 amazing educators who've been using some virtual tools to connect with their kids. There are 4 of them, 3 of them are kindergarten teachers, and they say #KinderStart2, and Amber Wise is also an AIC. So I'm going to pass it to Amber so she can introduce herself.
Hi guys, I am Amber Wise. I am the AIC at Smyrna Elementary, and I'm going to pass it off to Alyssa.
Hello, my name is Alyssa Bynum, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Smyrna Elementary, and I'm going to pass it on to Shaylee.
Hi everyone, I'm Shaylee Ice, a kindergarten teacher at Norton Commons, and I am going to pass it on to Olivia.
Olivia, you're muted. There you go.
Sorry, I'm Olivia Pinland. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Carrick.
Wow, so we got representation from across the district. This is what's awesome about these last 2 sessions. Great.
Okay, I'm trying to get the closed caption on.
Yep, and then if you could make it large, click on that little down arrow in next to it and say text size large.
Large. Okay, I should be good at this. All right, here we go. All right, I'm so excited. You're right. We have representation across the district to share about using virtual manipulatives and real-world experiences to support all learners. The National Research Council has conducted a conclusive study titled Adding It Up in response to this growing concern of the U.S. students' lack of mathematical thinking skills. And we know with this globalization of markets, information technology, and the majority of careers in STEM fields, we've got to teach students how to think mathematically and think mathematically to learn. And this concrete representational abstract sequence of learning is the way to do that. And these ladies are here to share some amazing ideas. So as we look at these 2 graphics, we know everything we do is through the lens of JCPS 3 pillars. Equity means access for all. We must provide that equitable access to build number sense and learn grade level content if we're to overcome this achievement gap. Zaretta Hammond, in her text, Culturally Responsive Teaching, refers to this inequitable access of students of poverty and English language learners and students of color. As we support students from shifting to dependent to independent learners, we provide these tools for access. And you're going to hear from these ladies on exactly how to do that. Amber, Alyssa, Shaylee, and Olivia will all share ways and talk about the equitable access with asynchronous and flexible learning opportunities. I've learned so much from these ladies. You'll also hear a lot about culture and climate. Shaylee talks about her kinders and the social emotional learning that she consciously puts in with which one doesn't belong, and how she's coached these young kids to mute themselves and respect one another virtually, just like they did in their classroom. You're also going to hear from Amber as she shares about the prepared and resilient learners in this Pixar quest. You're going to hear how those backpack of success skills are supported through this intentional planning when students use the models and structure of the base 10 system as they engage in these visual tasks with the Pixar characters. We know these standards of math practice that are on the right are equally as important as the content standards. So Shaylee, Amber, Olivia, and Alyssa all share examples of students justifying or making sense of problems and then justifying their solutions. Looking at these two screens, the graphic on the left, we're reminded of the importance of conceptual understandings. Manipulatives serve as this tool of student meaning making, and these ladies use virtual and real world manipulatives in students' homes as they engage them. Alyssa's going to share about her kinders use number racks to compose and decompose numbers, and the visual manipulatives serve students to how to justify their reasoning to her and other students. I also want to point out the graphic on the right. This is Joe Bowler's math norms and everything that I believe. It's based on Carol Dweck's research and growth mindset. You're going to hear about Olivia and a fun routine she's been playing with her kids of Guess My Way with a number rack. And as she engages with students, you'll hear how she realizes every student can learn math at high levels. Math's about creativity and making sense. It's about communicating. It's not about performing. Shaylee's going to share her journey of beginning the first week of NTI with worksheets and then how much she's learned through the process and feedback from families and students. I cannot wait for these ladies. So I want to show you where these manipulatives are and then you let them talk. So how do we access these virtual manipulatives? First, you go to the Jefferson County NTI page and Teacher Toolkit. You'll notice the second graphic is Teaching and Learning, and the third, you'll choose Mathematics. From there, you'll scroll down this page until you see Virtual Manipulatives with Workspace. You can access these manipulatives here, or these are available at all times for free from the Math Learning Center, so I've included that link as well. When you get to them, they'll look like this. The top 4 support sharing, and these teachers will tell you how helpful that is with their students, and they're continuing to build sharing in more and more of their apps. So I want you to grab a pen and a notebook because I want to challenge you to hear one thing and try it. What's been challenging you lately? Is it reaching kids synchronously or asynchronously? Is it tools like Google Slides, Google Classroom, Google Forms? Is it the virtual workshop during number talks, number sense routines, the mini lesson, the work time, the reflection? Take a pen, set a goal. Think of one thing you can try today or tomorrow. And I'm going to pass it to Amber with that challenge.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm the AIC at Smyrna. So today I'm going to share with you guys a few ways that I've seen the teachers in my building using virtual manipulatives and real life experiences to make their work more engaging, more meaningful, and to help build that conceptual understanding. So NTI has definitely been a learning and growing experience for all of us. And I'm truly amazed at the teachers in my building and how they've been willing to put themselves out there and try new things during this time. So as Andrea mentioned, I challenge each of you to find something from our session today and go for it, just like the teachers we're showcasing today have. So the first learning experience that I am going to talk about is the quest that Andrea mentioned. This is from a first grade teacher, Miss Shoemaker. And the picture on the left is the Pixar character quest. So students had $15 to spend to build their Pixar team. And this focused on using friendly numbers and combinations of 10 to help them determine how they could spend that $15 to get the characters that they wanted. So after I saw this on their first grade choice board, I reached out to Ms. Shoemaker to tell her how cool I thought the idea was, and I needed to know what that next step was. What was this quest that her kids were going to go on? And at first, she didn't know where she was going to go next. So she said that if I could help her, if I had any ideas, that she was willing to go for it. So I came up with this idea that Charles Muntz, the guy that you see on the right of the screen, that he captured Slinky to join his dog pack. And the students would go on a quest answering math problems along the way to rescue Slinky. So I shared that with her and she did the rest. She put the standards into it. She decided to use the Google form. She used the virtual manipulatives. She made it more amazing than I ever could. So the picture on the right is the first part of the quest. Students had to tell time to the half hour on digital and analog clocks. And if they did this, they would figure out where Slinky was being hidden. Now, the cool thing that she did was in Google Forms, there's a way to format it where you only see one question at a time. And only if you get that question right does it reveal the second question. So if students got their clock question right, or their time question, they would get to go on to the second part of the quest. And the second part of the quest, Andre, if you can go on to the next slide, is where students had to add and subtract using place value models, which really helps build their conceptual understanding of why, when I add these numbers together, do they equal what they do. So if they got these 3 questions right on their quest, they released Slinky from his cage and got on to the next part of their quest. And the next part of the quest is where the students had to build a boat using virtual manipulatives. So these are the virtual manipulatives from the Math Learning Center that Andrea mentioned earlier. And what students had to do is they clicked on the link in the Google form. It took them straight to the Math Learning Center website where they clicked on the boat, the image down at the bottom, and then they built their ship using any shapes that they wanted to. So one thing I do want to mention about this tool, does not have that shareable feature that Andrea mentioned. However, Ms. Shoemaker was still able to use it. She just had her students take a screenshot or take a picture on their phone and send it to her that way. They also had to go back to their Google form after making their boat and tell her what shapes did they use and how many of them did they use. And then after answering this part, they would get the picture on the right, congratulating them of solving the quest and returning Slinky back to Bonnie. So Ms. Shoemaker just knocked this out of the park. She created a formative assessment that was relevant to the students, it was engaging, and it had such essential standards like adding and subtracting with place value understanding. So the second teacher that I'm going to talk about, the next 2 learning experiences, is from Miss Presley. She's a 2nd grade teacher at Smyrna, and she was hired in February, guys. So before we went to NTI, she was in the classroom for like less than a month. And she's not let that be an excuse for her whatsoever. She is trying anything and everything that we are throwing at her. So kudos to Miss Presley. So her and another 2nd grade teacher, Miss Stradley, have been doing live number of the day sessions. So that's synchronous work with their students at the same time. But they also posted into their Google Classroom so that if a student cannot get on live, they still have that access, building that equity into their classroom. So after I jumped on one of Miss Presley's labs with her, and at first she just had a piece of chart paper hanging in the background of her screen. And she did, using place value, she built in those mental math strategies, and I showed her what the virtual manipulatives like, the number pieces. So again, back to those virtual manipulatives from the Math Learning Center that Andrea talked about. This one does have that shareable feature. So if you look down at the bottom of the screen, there's a little box with an arrow towards the right side. And if you click that, it has the sharing app, which you can click it, you can click copy link, and then you can copy that link anywhere. Or you could copy image and you could copy the image anywhere. So what Ms. Presley decided to do was she created this number of the day board that you see, and she just copies the link into her Google Meet. And then that way students are able to click on that link. It takes them directly to the page and they can work right alongside with her. Or if they choose to, they can just follow her. She does share her screen with them so that she can just follow, or they can just follow along with her if needed, which I think again builds in that equity piece and that student choice of, do I need these manipulatives or do I have that understanding already where I don't need them? So the one thing that I did want to point out on this is the base 10 bank. So what students do is they add the number from the day before to the current number of the day, which is really building that conceptual understanding using those concrete manipulatives to build that place value. So when I combine or add my ones, my tens, my hundreds, this is why my answer is what it is. The next project that I'm going to talk about is an array project that Miss Presley did with her students. And she had them find items all over their house. They had to be the same items, and they built a concrete array out of those items. Then they had to write 2 repeated addition equations, and she also challenged them to write a multiplication equation. Now, we know multiplication isn't a second grade standard, but how happy are those third grade teachers going to be when they see that those second graders can do that? If you can do repeated addition, you can do multiplication. So Ms. Presley is just making ways through NTI to make it more engaging and more fun and really building in that understanding. So I am going to pass it off to Alyssa that's going to K Can 2.
Thank you, Amber. Yes, my name is Alyssa Bynum, and I teach kindergarten at Smyrna Elementary, like I've already mentioned. I am going to talk to you all today about how to use the virtual manipulatives during mini lessons, and also assigning tasks for your students to complete during NTI. So displayed on the slide are 2 pre-recorded lessons using the virtual manipulatives that I created. The lesson on the left is using the number line tool to solve addition and subtraction word problems. And the other on the right is composing and decomposing teen numbers into tens and further ones using the number pieces tool. I use Screencastify to record all of my mini lessons, and then I link them on a choice board for my students to view. I hope you get a chance at a later date to view these examples I've provided of pre-recorded mini lessons using the virtual manipulatives. These virtual manipulatives have been extremely helpful to myself and my team when pre-recording mini lessons for students or doing live lessons on Google Meet. If you want to take a look at the lessons I've shared with you, you will see how I model the use of both tools, including the number line and the number pieces for my students. By doing this, I feel that helps my students to have an understanding of how to use the tools when completing their assigned work with the given manipulatives. Each day during NTI, we have a mini lesson using virtual manipulatives, and then I assign the students work that directly relates to the mini lesson that was taught. This gives students a chance to use and explore the virtual manipulatives to solve similar math problems. I have found that students absolutely love using the virtual manipulatives because it engages them and it gives them a chance to explore. As a team, we have gotten a lot of great parent feedback about assignments using these manipulatives because students are more focused on their work and it helps them stay on task. I feel that this is essential for all students, but especially those students in kindergarten who are trying to complete their NTI work at home with plenty of distractions and low attention spans. While engaging with the virtual manipulatives, students find these tools so fun, they don't even realize they're learning. These manipulatives also give students a chance to show and explain their thinking to the teacher and to others. One thing I want to highlight about these lessons that I've shared is how it helped that the students were already familiar with the tools after using the physical and concrete versions of them often in the classroom earlier in the school year. I would highly suggest that teachers use tools their students are already familiar with when designing their lessons for NTI. If not, I highly recommend that you spend more time virtually modeling these tools to your students during mini lessons. Like many of you, connecting to students during NTI has been extremely tough for me. I have about 4 to 7 students who are joining my live sessions because parents are unavailable to assist them getting on the computer and in general low parent involvement. Because of this, anytime I do a live session that includes a mini lesson, I make sure I record it and then I post it in my Google Classroom. So this allows students who missed the live session to go back and view it. Next slide, please. So the next 2 slides show tasks I assigned my students directly relating to my mini lesson using the virtual manipulatives from the Learning Center. So also shown is the completed student work for the given task. So the first task I created is shown on the left. This task focuses on decomposing 10 using the number rack tool. After designing the task for students to complete, the virtual manipulatives make it very easy to share the link with or to the task with your students. So there is a share button, like Amber mentioned, in the bottom right-hand corner, where you can copy the link or even copy a code for students to access the task. Students can complete the work and even share an image of their completed work with the teacher. On the right side of the slide, you can see examples of completed student work. One simple way that our team has used for students to share their work is having parents email images or screenshots of the completed work from the virtual manipulative page. This encourages parents to help their children with their NTI work and to be partners in their learning. The second task I created on the next slide is using the number frames tool, and that is shown on the left of the slide. This task focuses on finding a number when paired with a given number that makes 10. On the right of the slide, it shows examples of completed student work for the task. So this is just another example of how you could use the virtual manipulatives to assign tasks to your students. Students enjoyed both of these assignments as it allowed them to explore the virtual manipulatives and creatively solve given problems. I encourage you to try to use these virtual manipulatives when planning mini lessons and even creating engaging tasks for your students to complete during NTI. They have made teaching math during NTI both more effective for me and much more enjoyable for my students. Thank you, and now on to Shaylee.
Hey everyone, I am Shaylee Ice from Norton Commons. I am going to share with you my journey that I have taken so far through the NTI process. So we started out as a team thinking, what could we do to make this easy for parents to where they can access things and their students can still learn new things and have a review of things we did in class. So we thought as a team, why not just assign a math worksheet for the students to complete, and they could complete the worksheet, send us a picture of it, and it can be finished. Well, we quickly realized from getting feedback from the parents that this was not the most effective way. At home, parents said that the students were not engaged, that even students were refusing to do the work because they were bored and did not want to do another worksheet. So we had to go back to the drawing board and think, what could we do to where parents could have access to things at home and still make this engaging for students, but easy for parents to do also. So the first thing that I decided to do was to change the way I did my community meetings. I have a community meeting on Monday and Thursday each week, and during this community meeting, I was doing calendar on Monday and Thursday. And I chose to do this because it was the exact same thing that we did in class every morning, and I was very intentional with trying to still keep the same thing happening like we were in class. Well, the students were getting bored with the calendar, so I decided on Monday we would still do calendar and have a share. And on Thursday, we would do a fun activity for the students to complete. And one thing that the students we have been doing together is playing a game called Which One Doesn't Belong. And I've linked the website on this so you can click on it and go to it. And when you go to this website, it has all different types of examples that you can just copy and paste to your slideshow for the students to see. Now, this doesn't just have kindergarten examples. It has examples all the way up to 12th grade that you could use with students. And one thing that I really like about this is we really focus on the social emotional learning at our school and making sure that every student feels a part of our classroom community. And with this, the students are all able to have a voice, because when you play Which One Doesn't Belong, there is no wrong answer. So that's one thing that I really like about this, because the students are all engaged and they're all raising their hand and excited to share, because they know that their answer cannot be wrong. And they even try to come up with different things to figure out which one doesn't belong, to where they can come up with an example other than what their peer said. So they're really learning how to be effective communicators, and they're having a voice in the classroom, because they have to say which one they think doesn't belong, and then they have to also say why it doesn't belong. And I just love listening to all of their reasons that they think one picture doesn't belong over the other. And the other example I showed is one of the Which One Doesn't Belong. I actually created it from student work that has been sent to me. The students were creating shapes. So I took their shapes that they created and created my own Which One Doesn't Belong board. And with this, the students loved it because they had buy-in to what they were seeing. And they loved seeing their examples in our game that we were playing. Like I said earlier, we were doing worksheets at the beginning of the NTI process, and it just wasn't working based on parent feedback. So we decided to switch it up, and we came up with a different task focusing on identifying 2D shapes, where the students had to go around their house, find different objects in their house, draw the object, write what the object was, and what shape it was. And we did this because we thought it would be a really good way for students to see real world examples of shapes in their house. You can see on the examples, one little girl drew a picture frame and said it was a square, or another student drew a box and said that it was a rectangle. But again, from parent feedback, we quickly realized that this was better, but it still wasn't great, because the students were having a hard time drawing the picture. Some of them were getting very frustrated because they couldn't draw the picture to look like the object that they were drawing. So again, from parent feedback, we learned, and we went back to the drawing board to say, what else could we do to help? So the next thing that we decided to do was still stick with the 2D shapes, but have the students model the shapes using objects they had in their house. So for example, you can see in the first picture, the little girl is making a diamond out of crowns. Or the second picture, the little boy used 4 Post-it notes and he put them together to make a larger square. Or in the last picture, the little girl used little paint containers to make a triangle. With this, I saw the students were very engaged. I even had students making videos and showing me what they made, telling me how they made it, what shape it was. And you could just see the joy on their face, getting to have that hands-on experience and using real-world examples in their house. And it just made all of the difference. So I hope, listening to what I had to say, you can go take that and see that this process is hard for everybody, and we're all learning, and we're all going to keep learning through this process. And I hope that you can just take one thing and just try it out in your classroom. So thank you, and I'm going to pass it to Olivia.
Hi, everyone. Like I said earlier, my name is Olivia Penland. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Carrick. So I'm going to talk really quickly about how I'm using virtual manipulatives in games. And one game in particular is Guess My Way. You'll see those slides in the first 2 pictures on this slide. So Guess My Way can be played one-on-one in small groups or whole class. So I'm going to kind of tell you how to play it so that you can maybe take this back to your classroom. Partner 1, which is usually me, as I've played with my students during NTI, thinks of a target number and creates that number on a Rec and Rec using 2 racks, so a rack on the top and a rack on the bottom. The students have been partner 2, and they're trying to guess the way that I, partner 1, am making the target number. So their goal is to guess the correct way. So in the second picture on the slide, you see that the target number is 3. Under the grayed out shade at the top of that second picture is a Rec and Rec that I made 3 on. So students are trying to guess how many beads are on the top and the bottom. So students might guess that there are 3 on top and 0 on the bottom. If they're incorrect, I would say, well, 3 plus 0 is 3, but that's not my way. And I would encourage them to guess again. So as students guess, I record the equations on the screen so that they can keep track of ways that have already been guessed. If they're correct, I would say, you guessed my way. 3 plus 0 is 3. So because of the shade, students can play live or on their own time by clicking the eye at the bottom. And you can easily see what's behind the shade that way. So Guess My Way is just a formative assessment that you can use and can easily be differentiated as well. And with that, I will give it to Andrea so she can wrap up quickly.
We didn't quite finish. Olivia had some more great ideas as well, but you've heard so much from these ladies. I love this phrase that perfect never gets off the paper, and I've added or across the screen. But this is a journey. They've all shared their contact information because they're excited to hear from you, as well as Twitter handles. And if you're on Twitter, please tag JCPS-KY Math so we can continue to build this community together. Thank you.
Excellent. Man, jam-packed sessions. The last 2 sessions, we had lots of rockstar teachers. We've had like seven educators. I mean, it's just amazing from across the district, the kind of stuff that we're doing and that's out there and resources for everyone to kind of take back and put in their toolbox. So thank you guys for joining us today. We appreciate you. And up next at 10:30, we've got transition support, riding the kindergarten bus. And so, that's something, if I had an incoming kindergartner, I would really be tuned into this session. So we've got, who do we have presenting this session, actually?
I'm going to be doing it, Jennifer Albright.
Awesome.
And Megan Sparks is going to be manning the chat box. So if you have any comments or questions, please put them in there.
Awesome. And I'm Russ Hockenberry, Zone 3 Digital Innovation Lead. And are you guys ready?
I believe so. Now, are you going to be linking our presentation?
Do you have you sent it to, who have you sent it to?
I don't know. I may not have sent it to anybody. So
you can send it to me and I'll link it. Yeah, I'll link it if you send it to me. Russell Hockenberry.
I will do that.
All right. Awesome.
Okay. Here we go. See if I can get this to work. Okay, I don't know if that's showing up on the screen.
Not yet. So how about this? If you go up to the 3 dots, do you see the 3 dots next to the cogwheel?
Yes.
Click on those 3 dots and it says share screen.
Yes. And I want to share my entire screen.
Correct.
And then I pick the screen I want to share.
Yes. So let's try that.
Okay. Is that working?
No.
No. You still see me.
Let's see. Do you have your slides up? All right, there you go. You got it. Excellent.
Okay. Got it.
All right. And so if you could click the hide button, see where it says stop sharing and hide, click hide.
Okay.
And then also your closed captions. Do the little down arrow there. Click on the little down arrow. And then make them large, text size large. And large, and then you're good to go. Yep, good to go.
All right. So the first thing we have is we're going to be talking about riding the kindergarten bus. We have preschoolers who are just going to be learning how to ride a kindergarten bus, which is different than riding the preschool bus, because on the preschool bus, it is door to door. It picks them up at their door and takes them to the hands of their teachers and assistants in preschool. And also, there is not a monitor on a kindergarten bus, whereas there is on the early childhood bus. Our agenda for this session is to deal with several different things. What are the parents concerned about with their children starting to ride a bus with, quote, big kids rather than just preschoolers? What are the children anxious about? Because we know that they're going to have some anxiety. And then what can we do to help children feel less anxious? There is a program that we use in preschool called Second Steps, which works on some social emotional learning. And one of the weeks that we would be doing if we were in school right now, we would be working on the Second Steps lesson of riding the kindergarten bus and about naming your feelings as we work on all through the school year, naming your feelings and then how to self-calm. We've added in here a picture that the children can color. They can draw themselves and the bus driver and perhaps any friends that they know or neighbors or siblings that are going to be riding the bus with them. So this is mostly a presentation for teachers to share with their parents, because I think the parents are going to be very integral in helping their children to feel much more comfortable riding the bus, because it is a little different than what they've experienced before. We send them a home link with each of the lessons for Second Steps. And so this is something that would go home to parents if we were in school, to help the parents know how to help their children get ready to ride the bus. With each lesson in Second Steps, there is a poster that goes with it with some questions, some guiding questions for the teacher to help sort of guide a conversation in the classroom. There is a video that they have, so we'll just watch that.
But Anna feels worried. She doesn't feel very comfortable because she doesn't want to get on the bus. She's not sure what it will be like. She thinks it might be scary. Anna's having a very strong feeling. What can you think Anna could do to calm down? She could put her hands on her tummy. She could talk to someone and tell them what she's feeling. She could take some deep belly breaths. Anna takes some belly breaths. She quietly says to herself, I can do it. It'll be okay. I'll sit next to my friend. She sits down by her friend and stays calm all the way to kindergarten. If Anna still felt worried after calming down, who could she talk to? She could talk to her teacher. She could talk to the bus driver or her mom and dad.
So that is an example of the lesson that students would be hearing if they were in the school building. Their teacher would have done that lesson. Here's the visual that is posted in each classroom to help the children understand how to calm down, whether it's anything that they're nervous about, any sort of conflict that they've been having at home or at school. It helps them to have those steps of putting their hands on their tummy, saying stop, naming their feeling, and then taking belly breaths. There's also visual supports that go with the Second Step lesson that work on naming feelings, helping to recognize the feelings of others in their environment and also naming their own feelings. We have a video that is a resource for families that is some role playing that parents can do with their children at home.
fifth grade friend. And that's pretty good. So we're going to look at some of our points today here. I have my little helper with me, and we are going to practice writing the bus. Here's our friend Tessa. Tessa feels a little nervous. Tell by her face that she feels nervous. She's gonna wait by her house. This is our friend Kobe. Our friend Kobe feels happy. He's excited. All right. Okay, bus driver. Drive down the road. Right down the road. The bus driver. You first stop. Kobe. Kobe is excited to see the stop line come out of the bus. Kobe is excited. Let's open the door. Open the door. Bus driver. Wait. It's time. Nope, we have to pick up Tessa next. Kobe's gonna get on the bus. Yay! I am so excited to get on the bus. Hooray! Bye, Mom. I love you. I'll see you after school. Kobe is super excited, and that was so easy for him to get on the bus to go to kindergarten. Let's see what happens at Tessa's house. Okay, bus driver, let's go pick up our next friend. We're driving. Let's go to Tessa's house. Hey, here's the bus to kindergarten. Tessa's nervous. I don't want to get on the bus. Wait. I don't want to get on the bus. I feel scared. Well, clearly Tessa does not feel scared right now. But it's a good way for us to talk about emotions. Practice role playing for how we might feel when we get on the bus. Obviously, this is just an example. And kids have their own agenda. Have a great day.
So that was Megan working with her child to role play. We also have a social story about riding the bus to school that you can use. This is on the Early Childhood MTSS website. And here is our social story where you would read this with the student before riding the bus, probably starting several weeks before the beginning of school so that the children can be very used to exactly what the steps will be. It starts with riding the bus. Going to school is fun. To get to school, you are going to ride a bus. There will be other children on the bus too, so it might be loud. You have to stay in your seat and may need to wear a seatbelt. No yelling and no standing. If you need help, you can ask the bus driver. When you get to school, you will get off the bus, and at the end of the day, you will ride the bus home. The end. We use this with our students when they are already in preschool, and we also use it when we transition them to, quote, big school when they go to kindergarten. You also can do social stories that include characters that the children really like. Here is one that we did for Paw Patrol, where you would say, Joey and Paw Patrol's story. Chase and the Paw Patrol want Joey to be safe when he is on the bus. Chase says Joey needs to stay in his seat at all times. and you would just place a picture of the student sitting on the bus so that they feel part of the story. Paw Patrol bus safety rules. Joey needs to sit in his seat at all times. Joey needs to sit on his bottom. Joey needs to keep his hands and feet still. Joey needs to listen to whatever the bus driver's name is, Mr. Smith, and the bus monitor's instructions. Joey will have a bus bag to help him keep safe and sit quietly. Many times children need a transition object or even just a coloring book or a little toy to hold to help them feel comfortable. Joey will have a chart to help him get on the bus and stay in his seat. If Joey does these things, he will earn a happy face. And then you would have a visual of the chart so that the student knows what it is that they are working for. Joey's mom, dad, and teacher will be happy if he gets a green happy face. Mr. Smith is so happy that Joey got on the bus and kept himself and others safe. And then you would include a picture of the bus driver. Paw Patrol will cheer for Joey and say, "Great job, Joey." We also want parents to know that Bus Finder is available. And so we provided a link to the Bus Finder that helps to help the parents be less anxious, which will go a long way to helping the children feel less anxious. So there's a link to the Bus Finder. Parents would just put in their address and the school that their children are going to attend, and then click search so that they can pick the best bus stop for their individual needs. We've also included lots of options for books that children can look at that talk about riding the bus. Some of these are particularly focused on kindergarten in general, and then how the bus ride plays into any sort of anxiety that the children may be experiencing about going off to kindergarten. These are links to videos that can be shared with teachers and then also with parents. We do have some helpful hints for parents. 5 tips for kindergarten bus riders. First, remind your child to choose a seat in a row close to the bus driver. Second, introduce yourself to the bus driver and be mindful of where your child is sitting, preferably in the view of the driver. If you are not present at the stop, make sure you share this information with whoever might be meeting the child when they come home, and also helping them get on in the morning. Let the bus driver know about any special needs your child may have that could affect their ability to travel safely. If you have a student with any special needs, the bus driver will probably get a copy or have access to a copy of the IEP. Practice the calm down steps with your child if they're anxious about riding the bus. Model those steps for your child. Stop, name your feeling, and take belly breaths. And model positive feelings about the bus and starting kindergarten. And also make sure that your child's bus tag stays on their backpack all year long. We do have time for some questions and comments if there are any. Megan hasn't told me that there are any.
I don't think that there are any actually, but there are just a lot of people saying great tips. I love that you included the resources in there, like the Pete the Cat book, just the characters that they're familiar with, the Paw Patrol, the Pete the Cat book, lots of different resources there that kids are familiar with and that they can identify with. Man, I tell you, if Molly of Denali had a bus thing, that would be huge. But yeah. Awesome tips.
So Megan and I are special ed resource teachers for preschool. And so we primarily work with children with special needs, but I think that a lot of these tips go a long way for all children who are starting kindergarten, whether they've been in our preschool program or not. I think the parents have just as much anxiety about their kids riding the bus as their children do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
all right. If we got anything else going on, I think that's about it. Did you have anything else you wanted to share with us today?
No, I think we're almost done with NTI, and this has been a learning experience for all of us about digital learning.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, and so let's
I'll
take
be sure
a
to
look.
send the link to you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Let's
Thanks.
talk about that now. So we've got actually, if you check your the JCPS digital, I'm going to show you guys the JCPS digital learning support schedule. Earlier during my Rocking NTI Exemplary Teachers Share All session, I alluded to this page, and this is where you're going to find the resources for every session. And so on these sessions, you'll just scroll underneath the title of the session, and you will see the name of the students, or name of the teachers, sorry, students, the name of the teachers that and educators that presented. And so, like, for example, that 9:30 session, Rebecca Ferguson, Sarah Brock, and Amberly Nunn, I have linked those resources now. So if I click on that, their names, it opens up the presentation there. And so it starts with Sarah Brock's slides for kindergarten, and it goes all the way down through Rebecca Ferguson and a special area STEAM slides there. So lots of great resources in that virtual support schedule. And I will get those transition support riding the bus slides linked up when I get those. So thank you very much.
I think I just sent them to you.
Okay, great.
I shared it with you.
Awesome. I will link those up. And so up next, thank you. Up next on our channel, we've got it actually is a throwback episode, and it's not a live episode, but it's Deeper Learning with Devices Before You Go One-to-One with Maddie Shepard and myself. And we did this episode back in October of 2019. And so it was actually on Halloween. So that's I'm going to skip over the part where I'm asking everybody their favorite candy. But it talks about, when you go one-to-one, there's some things to think about. Like, what do you do next? Okay, we've got these devices, but what do we do next? And why did you go one-to-one in the first place? So that is the episode that we've got coming up at 11 o'clock, and we may jump into that a little bit early. But let's check out, though, right now, let's check out the JCPS Dig In hashtag. Right, so JCPS Dig In. Looking at that bus finder thing that they were showing in that last session, I always tell my wife it'd be really cool if there was an app where you were driving around the county, and like no matter where you were in the county, you pulled up the app, and like it immediately told you what schools were in that cluster. Like, that's the app I think needs to be made for JCPS. It's like I'm just driving randomly around. I'm always like wondering, well, what elementary schools are in this cluster? If I live in that neighborhood, like what elementary? It's just basically like, you drive and it pops up, and so that's just a thought, JCPS app people. All right, so the latest thing here on the JCPS Dig In Twitter hashtag, we've got Kyle Chandler giving a yes card to Don Bratcher at Laster Middle School. And Kyle rarely tweets. So Don Bratcher, you should be very, very grateful for this yes card, because man, Kyle rarely tweets. So he must really, really think you're doing an awesome job. So Don, he says, thank you for your continued support of your staff and students. We appreciate you. And so she's actually the DP Vills coach at Laster Middle School too, which is awesome. We've got Heather Hurst at Alex Kennedy, the librarian, and she's got a shout out to students participating in the Mad Wolf's Daughter Virtual Book Club. Huh, neat. I'm not familiar with that. Oh man, Kyle, 2 tweets in one day, Kyle, man, that's amazing. All right. He says, Kate, thank you for agreeing to be showcased on the Digital Learning Channel. The staff and students at Mazik are lucky to have your dedication and support. So there's Kate, Master Nicola. Man, Kate does everything. Kate is the STLP leader there at Mazik. I believe she's the STC too. And she's also going to be on our channel too, which is exciting. But Kate's great. She really is. So good yes card there, Kyle. And more tweets from our channel, just basically pumping stuff we've got coming up on our channel. Here is something you should be really excited about on our channel at 1 o'clock today. Eric Caston from Middletown Elementary, he will be sharing about badging. He creates these badges for his students, and his students get to earn these badges, these micro credentials, throughout the week. So he's kind of gamified NTI. And so he'll be talking about that gamification aspect of his NTI classroom at 1 o'clock on our channel. Eric Caston at Middletown Elementary, and I believe he is second grade. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, in the chat or something, but Mr. Caston is a digital innovator for sure. All right, scrolling down more, let's take a look and see what else we've got. Missed this session this morning. You want to go back and check that out, because we had kindergarten represented with Sarah Brock at St. Matthew's Elementary. Sarah is a rock star. It's amazing how many people from across the district know Sarah Brock's name. I said in the show that she is kind of the Jan plan guru for the district. People will come to her classroom from all over the district to watch her do the Jan plan stuff, and Sarah's amazing. Kindergarten teacher at St. Matthew's Elementary. Rebecca Ferguson, she's a special area teacher at Alex Kennedy Elementary. And Amberly Nunn, a 5th grade teacher at Dunn Elementary. And Amberly is somebody that has a really good people name recognition too. You're like, oh, I know Miss Nunn at Dunn Elementary. All 3 rock stars here, and they talked about what they are doing with NTI, and shared some amazing resources. Those are linked on our virtual support schedule, like I showed you a few minutes ago. And yeah, so lots of good stuff. I was trying to see if I could find a third tweet from Kyle today, but I'm not going to be able to do it. Maybe he's going to do it soon, though. So very good. Kyle, you're killing it, man. Oh, my gosh. Right here. Seek and ye shall find, right? So here is Kyle Chandler, third tweet of the day. Matt, thank you for leading the technology efforts for your students and staff. They are lucky to have you. Matt Manis from Carithers Middle School. Carithers Cobras. Very good. All right. So that is our JCPS Dig In hashtag. And like I said from earlier, we're going to go back in time to Halloween of 2019. And we're going to watch this Deeper Learning Before You Go 101. And this is actually a 57-minute or 59-minute video. So we're not going to watch all of it, but we're going to start off. It's lots of great tips, though. So let's check this out.
But I think when I eat a scoreboard,
Opportunity to talk.
And I'm going to start sharing my screen. Again, the topic today is 1-to-1. And we don't have a lot of 1-to-1 schools in JCPS just yet. We're getting there.
Well, before we do, we thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about some of the whys, hows, and whats behind 1-to-1 in our classrooms.
So let's just start with this. You guys see my screen here?
You're good to go.
Perfect. All right. So you've just gone 1-to-1, and 1-to-1, for those people that maybe you don't know, 1-to-1 means one device, one student. So if you've got 500 kids in your building, you've got 500 devices. The device follows the student there. Okay. So 2 questions. You've just gone 1-to-1. The first question you should have thought of is why? Why are we going 1-to-1? That's a question you should think about before you go 1-to-1. Why exactly are you going 1-to-1? And then after you go 1-to-1, what's next? Okay, and it all goes back to your vision for technology. We talk about, and when I'm talking about vision, a lot of times I'm talking about administrators. So administrators have, being in administrative classes myself, and having that degree, we talked a lot about vision, mission and vision. But we never touched on the technology part of having a vision for technology. And so that's what we're going to talk about first here. When you go 1-to-1, have that vision for technology, and you can eliminate some issues that pop up later down the road.
One of my favorite leaders of professional development here in the tri-state area is Kim Strobel. I know she was at our Deeper Learning Symposium and is kind of an authority, especially in the Midwest, on Genius Hour. And she always begins her presentations and her sessions with one of my favorite quotes, and that is, when you lose your why, you lose your way. And so today's conversation, as Russ really eloquently explained, is getting down to the why for introducing devices into our classroom, and what kind of impact and gains we to see as a result of this introduction and impactful usage.
Exactly. Great point, Maddie. We have there's some amazing leaders in JCPS that definitely have a great vision for technology. We'll highlight some of those later. But yeah, so when you talk about vision for technology, I've got my school bus little image here, and so you've got that question there that's on the side of the bus there. What will we do with technology, and how will we get there? And so driving the bus, of course, a good vision for technology is digital citizenship. You have to think about digital citizenship first. So how are your kids going to interact with each other, interact with their teachers? How are you really going to teach digital citizenship and model good digital citizenship for your students? And that should revolve around your technology vision and really be driving your plan. Having instructional supports and modeling. Okay, so like your teacher, you just hand your teachers 30 Chromebooks and say here, and the next day they're just expected to use them. That's really not a good plan, right? So how are you going to support your teachers with this new technology? How are you going to help them out? Are you going to have teachers push into classrooms? So like our DP Vills coaches, they are specifically there to push into classrooms and model best practices instruction with those iPads, with technology, one-to-one technology. So do you have those instructional supports in place? Quality PD, okay? So are your teachers attending quality professional development on technology? Okay, that's an important thing there. Or are they not attending PD? We all need to learn and grow. The whole idea between professional development is to develop professionally. And so if you're not attending quality PD on anything, you're really kind of shortchanging yourself. And then do you have those teacher leaders that are in your building? And we've done a great job with teacher leaders with our Google certification cohorts. I mean, Eisenhower has 20, Jack, how many Google level 1 certified people does Eisenhower have?
That's a great question. I don't know the numbers, but it's 20 plus, and Mill Creek is the same way. They have lots, I don't know, something like 3/4 or even more of their faculty are Google certified in both those schools, I think.
And you may be asking, well, how does being a teacher leader or Google certified, how does that equate? But it's just knowing how to use the tools, and knowing how to use it. If you know how to use the tools first, you can start to think how to use them innovatively later. Okay, that builds that foundation. Having that foundation with that level 1 certification is super important. And having those leaders in your building, they can say, hey, yeah, I know how to do this. You're thinking about doing something like this? Well, I've done that, or I can show you how. And also in your PLCs, attacking instruction and those SMART goals with technology integration in mind, right? And then, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I came from a district and was a part of a district-wide one-to-one launch. And a lot of the feedback that we got from teachers across the board was that they were really appreciative of the professional development they received before launching one-to-one implementation in their classroom. And so to speak to Russ's point about building capacity in teachers, it's a really good investment to empower teachers to get that Google Level 1 certification or to attend professional development on education technology in general to better prepare and build capacity in teachers to be able to introduce this into the classroom in an intentional way and be able to look back on their own learning when they were learning about Google or about other education technologies to be able to scaffold for students as well.
Yeah, and we had a principal here at JCPS that would not let her teachers touch the Chromebooks until they were level 1 certified. And so I think that's an excellent idea. You don't want to give somebody this amazing tool and then have them use it in a less than amazing way, right? So notice there, I've also got a sticker on the bus for STLP, because when we think about, a lot of times when I go into schools, people will ask me, or they'll say stuff like, well, I had no idea we could do that stuff. I had no idea we could do that stuff with Google Drawings or with Google Sheets or with Google Slides. When we talk about what kids can do with technology, STLP is the perfect model for what our kids can do with technology in Kentucky. So STLP is a big factor when you think about vision with technology in JCPS. All right, so let's get into, here's a good quote. I think, Maddie, you like this. Buying devices without a clear vision for technology is like buying a pool and not knowing how to swim, all right? At best, you're just kind of looking, the pool's there. It's nice and pretty, right? Like you've got a pool, you can lay out by the pool, get your son in or whatever. But like at worst, it's super dangerous, right? we have schools and districts across the country that are actually going back from being 1-to-1 3-4 years ago to actually taking away devices and not being 1-to-1 anymore because they did not have a clear vision or plan for their technology. Okay, so think about that.
I hope that teachers take the time to sharpen their saws and spend some time on their hobbies in the summer. One thing I do is I try to learn something new every summer. And some of my friends, their teachers, do this as well. And so I have this one friend, and before she'll learn a new hobby, she has to have all the gear. So she'll get, if she wants to take up mountain climbing or rock climbing, she'll get all the gear before she tries to climb even once. And every time, without fail, she always realizes I should have bought different gear. I should have bought less gear or more gear, or I should have looked at or at least had some experience to know what kind of gear I need before I go to Dick's and spend, hundreds of dollars on this hobby I'm not sure they'll like. And so to Russ's point about having a clear vision before we purchase devices, I think we really have to get clear about why we want devices, what we're going to leverage them to do. Because it's very possible that this type of conversation and thought process will lead us to a decision about our hardware. Maybe Chromebooks are the best option for our students at our school and really will help us get to our why. Maybe they're not. Maybe iPads, maybe MacBooks, maybe another piece of hardware is best for our students. So really thinking about what our why is and how we plan to leverage these devices to empower our users or learners. Really getting clear about the intent of the device introduction, again, to speak to Russ's point, is super important in order for us to make sure that the device integration is impactful on learning.
Absolutely. You have to know what you want your kids to do before you bring those devices in. What's the goal? What's the end game? And that's what I like about JCPS and what Heather Morrell's brought to this district. STLP is the end game. That's exactly what I'm preaching. All right. So on that note, we're going to talk about consuming technology versus consuming with technology versus creating with technology, okay? And so when we think about consuming with technology, we think of basically, you can call it passive versus active technology. So consuming technology, think of like stuff like watching YouTube videos or give me another example, Maddie.
YouTube videos, or a lot of our teachers have access to things like expeditionary learning, which is a great cache of lessons, but also exemplary items for demonstrations of learning. Things like Khan Academy. There's a whole lot of content out there made by teachers, made for teachers. And so there's a big bank out there for teachers to use to employ in the classroom for students to consume.
Right. So they're just not really creating with technology. And I was reading an article on edweek.org from 2016 that was talking about passive versus active. And they actually made the point that most of what adults do is very passive, like checking online, like on our phones, for example, checking my bank account, checking Twitter, looking up, different, texting. It's all just very passive activity. So it's not that passive or consuming is necessarily a bad thing. It's just when that's the lion's share, when we're talking about lion's share, probably like 80 to 90% of what kids are doing with technology, that's a huge problem. We're not giving those kids the opportunity to actually create with technology. And again, that's where STLP comes in, is STLP is full of opportunities and full of ideas for creating with technology. All right.
I just want to rephrase and repeat what Russ said just to make sure that we get this message across. Consuming is absolutely a very powerful way to leverage technology in the classroom. It's a great way to personalize the pace at which students access or practice new information. We know that students have the power of pause that we're allowing our teachers to access right now with our JCPS Backpack Live and all of the other YouTube channels that we have. So these are great instructional strategies. What we are saying, though, is that there's a whole other world of ways that students and teachers can be creators of content, can be creators of and redefine lessons or new learning or assignments. And so we really would like to broaden our discussion about technology to be not just about consuming, but also about how we can empower our teachers and learners to also be creators and contributors as well.
Absolutely. And so this is a YouTube video by Holly Clark, just a little clip of Holly Clark if you joined us at our EdTech Summit in, I think it was March, right, Jack? March or April. Anyway, in the spring, we did a EdTech Summit at Male High School, and Holly Clark was one of our guest speakers, so she was really good. And she makes a good point here about two teachers. If you give both of these two teachers, so like one teacher gets 30 devices and the other teacher gets 30 devices, how are they going to both act differently? Okay, so here's our two different teachers getting devices and how they use those devices. Here we go.
As a student in this class, I'm a learner, and I'm learning because my teacher is a learner first. As a student in this class, I can't express myself. My teacher doesn't hear me, and I cannot communicate to her how I learn through multiple choice answers. In an effort to make all classrooms look like this first classroom, people see the success of this teacher as the iPads. So school districts and school boards everywhere go out and buy iPads and Chromebooks, hoping that they can replicate this. But this is not the truth. If we gave this teacher a class set of iPads, chances are she would use it to deliver instruction and have her kids practicing skills. What makes the difference in these two classrooms is that this teacher is a learner. So today at this TED, I want us to do one thing.
All right, so you're probably like, well, what is, she's using those devices to deliver instruction and practice skills. What's wrong with that? Well, she's not giving her kids a chance to create. And probably what she means by deliver instruction and practice skills is those kids are on what we like to call software-based intervention programs most of the time. So stuff like MobiMax and Lexia and Dreambox, and they're doing stuff like that. They're basically doing digital test prep versus the classroom with the learner-taught classroom where kids are actually creating with test technology and really leveraging technology to be their best selves. So go ahead. This is just I do this presentation as a PD. So this is kind of like a little clip or slide I kept in there from the PD. But if you just picture a classroom where every student is on a Chromebook, what are they doing? Be specific. So we can all picture that in our minds. Either you've walked into a classroom when everybody has been on a device, and it doesn't have to be a Chromebook. It can be an iPad. It can be a MacBook, laptop, any kind of device. Every student's on a device. What are they doing? What do you see your kids doing or see those kids doing if every kid is on a device? And you got to think about that, all right? So not to put anybody on the spot, but does anybody have kind of an answer to that? If you're picturing a class where every student is on a device, what do you see?
I have been in classes like that, and I see lots of YouTube, but not in the way that you want your kids to be using YouTube. So that and a lot of music being played.
I see a lot of multitasking, doing different things at one time, not everybody doing the same thing, and checking in and out of probably what the tasks that they've been given at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So you see, we think there's the way to attack this question in the ideal way. Like ideally, I see kids working and collaborating. They're building, doing infographics, 3 people to a group. They're working in real time, or they're creating stuff with Soundtrap or whatever. And then there's the way that we're kind of used to seeing is where we walk in. And Jack, you make a great point about YouTube. Is we've seen stuff before where we walk into a classroom and the kids are all on devices and they watch the YouTube videos on like an animal. And then after they watch the YouTube video on an animal, they then go do a poster board about the animal. Instead of creating an infographic in Google Drawings or collaborating with their peers to create a digital product, they do passive technology to go right back to the old method of let's do poster board. It's a lot of times we don't always leverage technology in the best way in our one-to-one environments.
We something that I see is I see a lot of teachers using technology in amazing ways. And I see a lot of teachers being learners along with students. But I also see a lot of teachers focusing a lot of our tech integration in some of those lower levels of integration. So if we were to look at or talk about a sort of like a Bloom's taxonomy of tech integration, there's a framework for that called the SAMR model. And the lowest two models of that are substitution, which is what the S stands for, and augmentation, which is what the A stands for. And just very briefly, that just means that we're using the technology to substitute for an existing task. And so I see a lot of students taking notes on a Word document or accessing a PowerPoint. And those are great ways to speak to kids, but there are other ways where we can leverage technology in a much more impactful way.
Right. Yeah. Just that pure substitution. That's not the best way to do things. All right. So you put this picture in here, Maddie. What exactly is your point here?
So this is one of my favorite pictures, and I use this in PDs as well. And right now, a word that's floating around a lot in education, not just in Jefferson County or even Kentucky, or not even really in the United States, but really globally, is the idea of personalizing learning. And a lot of people all over the world equate personalized learning and tech integration with simply giving every student a laptop. And if we fall into that trap, what we're not going to have is innovation or creators of new content or huge growth because we're now speaking to students in a language that we're unable to speak to them through previously. But instead, we're going to have classrooms that look just like the classroom industrial revolution, but now it's instead of blackboards. And so the introduction of technology really isn't where the results lie. The results are lying with how we're leveraging that technology. What is our intent? How are we bringing students into that conversation? And how are we empowering students to be both responsible citizens of the digital world, but also creators of helpful, new, redefined content, and broadening the way that we allow students to show our learning. We know that in the world in general, a lot of our students are going to be entering into careers and jobs and positions that don't exist today on October 31st in 2018. And one of the best things that we can do to empower our students to be able to operate in an innovative world and in a global culture is to be able to allow them to be creators and redefiners and inventors and innovators of the digital world. And so, in short, what I really want to say about this graphic is simply putting a device into a kid's hand is not enough. We really have to be intentional and thoughtful about what we're leveraging these devices to do, but also what we're leveraging these devices to allow kids to be able to do too.
Hey, Russ, Maddie, we've got some people on the chat, Leanne DeTillo and Kathleen Receiver, Debbie Niles, all are contributing to the chat session. And Leanne just posted that at the Ville School, and I'm going to have Leanne maybe put in the chat who those schools are so I don't get them wrong. But she said at the Ville Schools, they're using something called the TIM model, which is the Technology Integration Matrix. And she said that it was a bit more detailed than the SAMR model. So you guys might want to check out the Technology Integration Matrix as an alternative to SAMR. But both, I'm sure, I mean, the SAMR model is fabulous as well. So
thank you for that.
Definitely. Another thing I like about this picture, Maddie, is every kid, it's like an old picture. Every kid's like sitting in desks, like in a row. It's like just basically just total old school stuff. And then you throw this like these devices on top of them. So it's just basically like same old stuff with devices, So
you kind of reminded me of another point too, which is that sometimes when we give every kid a device, one thing that might be an unintended consequence of that is that kids might lose collaboration.
Right.
And so what we see here in this graphic is, of course, Industrial Revolution classroom, but we also see a lot of isolation as well. And so just being intentional and thoughtful about, once we introduce devices, how can we leverage devices to allow students to collaborate more deeply and more effectively maybe allowing them to collaborate in virtual ways they might not feel comfortable doing in the classroom, or allowing them to collaborate outside of the classroom and really broadening the opportunities for them to collaborate, but also opening the door for them to, of course, with some digital citizenship training and scaffolding and instruction, opening the door for them to collaborate with people outside of their immediate school community, with professionals on the website Nepris. Nepris.com is a great place. It's like a clearinghouse of industry professionals that students could converse with, ask questions to, interview in a variety of ways, and really forge some community partnerships there. But also accessing things like Mystery Skype to collaborate with kids across the country and across the world. So that collaboration aspect of technology, really the ceiling is endless on the collaborative opportunities that we can foster and empower kids to be able to access, again, if we're intentional and thoughtful about how to retain that part of school that we know is super important to the development of the whole child.
Maddie, you actually brought up a good point. A lot of the work that we're working here at CES is to break down those silos that are containing us and isolating us as teachers and professionals. But even you're talking about making sure that those students we don't create silos by introducing these. So definitely those silos, breaking that down and adding that layer of collaboration across the world is even more powerful than we can even imagine. So love that.
Absolutely. All right. And so really the whole kind of driving point behind this entire show was a blog post back in January called An American Chromebook Crisis that Andy Losick, who was a STEM teacher in Michigan, wrote. And he wrote it based off this report by GoGuardian. We'll talk about GoGuardian in just a second, on how 5 million students are using their devices, their Chromebooks, okay? Like, how are students really using technology in classrooms? And so this presentation is linked in the description. You can click on that link and read that blog post there. And so we're going to dive into Andy's thoughts and the report right now. And so basically, Andy, I love this graphic here of the Home Alone of Macaulay Culkin. He's like, in short, a huge amount of Chromebook use is being spent on educationally questionable. All right, so educationally questionable video games and low-level assessments in YouTube, with the two highest trending websites for over 5 million learners after G Suite for Education being Cool Math Games and Renaissance Learning, the parent company to Accelerate Reader and other assessments, okay? And again, that report is linked down at the very bottom of this slide, and it's linked in that presentation that is linked in the description of the YouTube video that you're watching right now. And so the methodology behind that GoGuardian report that he references there, the 5 million learners, they analyzed student activity at home and at school across grade levels and subject areas based on Chromebook usage in the fall of 2016 and the fall of 2017. So the top 500 educational websites were selected and analyzed, okay? And so they looked at what sites are kids using the most in school. And they actually looked at what sites are they using the most at home as well. How are kids actually using these devices, these 5 million Chromebooks, okay? And so we're going to watch it. In the first question people have when I do this presentation, they're like, well, what is GoGuardian? What does GoGuardian how do we know this is what this report is? So let's watch a really quick video on what GoGuardian actually does and where this information is coming from. Oops.
So your school bought all these Chromebooks, but do you really know what students are doing on them? Do you have the tools to deal with an evolving web full of YouTube videos, Chromebook applications, and online chat sessions? And what happens when a Chromebook gets stolen? GoGuardian has the solution. Easily manage hundreds or thousands of Chromebooks at once. Push the software out to your devices with the click of a button and start gathering insights immediately. With detailed analytics, monitor how your Chromebooks are being used across your organization, from entire schools to specific classes to individual students. These critical insights give you the power to make informed decisions. Block sites, apps, or content. And GoGuardian flags specific searches for inappropriate material. Restrict undesired YouTube categories, keywords, or channels. And with our at-home filtering, students are protected even when they're not on campus. GoGuardian is designed with the invaluable input of hundreds of school administrators, and we'll continue to adapt to the evolving needs of educators. Don't go another day in the dark. Go to GoGuardian.com now and get started for free.
So GoGuardian basically is just a service that like IT departments use that kind of filter out websites and monitor Chromebook usage to see basically how kids are using devices. So that's where this information came from. It came from GoGuardian, and they were monitoring Chromebooks in these districts, these 5 million students. Okay, so the report found, the GoGuardian report, this found that the top educational sites trending overall were number one among 5 million students was cool math games. Cool math games. All right. So if I say cool math games or cool math for kids, cool math games is actually, if we look at it, it's blocked in JCPS, and it's actually among the top 25 blocked sites according to the report too. So Cool Math Games is a site full of just kind of, it does have, there are some math games on Cool Math Games that are educationally viable, I guess you'd say. Like Lemonade Stand, for example. I used to use Lemonade Stand on Cool Math Games for my kids. We do a contest, and at the end of class, whoever had the most money from the Lemonade Stand would win like a real lemon. But most of the games on Cool Math Games are full of adware and spyware and just kind of not very questionably educational. Exactly.
One thing Cool Math Games for Kids reminds me of is something that is near and dear to my heart and overall educational experience in childhood, and that is the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail was super fun, loved to play it. But the only things I really learned from that is how easy it is to get dysentery on the Oregon Trail and how easy it is to lose your oxen while crossing a river. So although the game is super engaging and fun, not a whole lot of education content. And I think Cool Math for Kids is similar. There is some education content, and it does hold some value, but it really falls under that sort of Oregon Trail organization for things that really have minimal educational value and maybe some things like Russ was explaining that serve to distract kids more than educate them. So again, no hate on Oregon Trail because I love that game and probably spent far too many hours on it when I was a 4th or 5th grader, but really not a whole lot of education content there.
Yeah, so again, so like Maddie and I were talking about this the other day, like Oregon Trail. Yeah, I love Oregon Trail. I love Odell Lake, all the old mech games. My kids actually, when I was teaching, we would do Oregon Trail. We'd go to archive.org or whatever site it was. We do Oregon Trail. And then after we played Oregon Trail, they would blog about their experience. So again, it's all about how you use these tools. So because my kids were reflecting on Oregon Trail and what they've learned, because they're covering West, actually, I do it in the middle of their westward expansion unit in 5th grade. So it fit right in. Okay. So yeah, it's just all about how you use these tools, really. So again, Cool Math for Kids or Cool Math Games. If you just do a Google search on Cool Math Games, you will come up with at least 9 or 10 look-alike sites. Cool Math for Kids, Cool Math Games dash whatever, cool dash math games. You'll come up with all these different iterations of Cool Math Games and Cool Math for Kids that are out there that are basically designed to kind of catch, to kind of catch all when kids are searching for these type of games. Okay, so maybe you block Cool Math dash games, but did you block Cool Math games.com or coolmathforkids.com? So just all right. And so we are going to come back now to our show. Hello. How's it going, guys?
Great. I just finished level 62 on coolmathgames.com.
Very good.
Nice.
Very good.
And I didn't die dysentery.
There you go. All right, and I'm going to resize the screen here because I know that it's a little bit off right now. So we'll see what happens here with the fit the screen, fit the canvas.
I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it. And I don't know why. So
let's see here. Remind myself how to do this.
Now, does that work?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, you're good to go, man. Let's
Okay.
All right. So, hey, we're back. Russ Hockenberry, Zone 3 Digital Innovation Leader. And I'm joined by Justin Elliott and Alan Young. And they are going to be talking today about, what are you guys talking about today?
Performance assessment micro-credentials.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's do it.
It is Alan's favorite thing to geek out about.
Perfect.
I don't know if that's true, but what I don't know is that when I talk, if my face comes on, everybody sees how big my hair is right now. My hair doesn't grow long, it grows big. So
there you go. Well, at least it still grows. There's that.
That's true.
So, Rob, are you looking at the screen I'm sharing?
I see it. Yeah, I'm on it.
All right.
There you go.
Right, that's good.
Good to go.
All right. Well, this I think we found out yesterday. We did this show yesterday. We found out this is quite a contrast from our previous show about success skills at home, because where that is kind of relying on common sense and something we can all access, this sounds much more technical and academic, but I think we'll find that even though it's called something like performance assessment micro-credentials, the basic principles at work here are really quite simple.
Hey, do you have your closed captioning on, Justin?
No, I don't.
Go ahead and turn that on real quick.
Yeah, okay, is that it? All right. So what we're going to talk about is performance assessment micro-credentials. Let's take the phrase and break it in half and talk about each part. Performance assessment. That is when teachers design assessments that allow kids to show their skill or knowledge through a performance or a demonstration. To contrast it with a multiple choice assessment, which requires kids to choose the right bubble, a performance assessment actually expects kids to perform or demonstrate the skill that is being assessed. Often it results in products and performances or other evidence of learning. These are the things that go in a backpack. Performance assessment is a broad category of assessments that include project-based learning and backpack artifacts. So if you're planning on backpack artifacts for your kids, you are planning performance assessment. Another common example is the on-demand writing task. It is limited to writing, but it is a way for kids to demonstrate their ability to go through the writing process independently. So that would be considered a performance assessment.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add here, this is where a lot of times we think discreetly in order to see if a person has mastered a standard or not, we have to have a separate bubble item on a test. But I think we would argue that performance assessments are actually better measures of the verbs of standards and what they can do than when we talk about choosing one of four and see if you can recognize something that's on a standard. So this is not in addition to or instead of trying to do standards demonstration. It may be the best way to do how we show our kids are meeting standards.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. When we look at standards like some of the science standards that say students will design an experiment to test, or they'll create a solution to a certain problem. These sorts of standards are difficult for kids to demonstrate or show competence in any way other than doing them. It's hard to imagine a multiple choice question that would really get to the depth of the standard. The second part of this is about micro-credentials. So micro-credentials are small badges that professionals earn by demonstrating competence or ability in a specific skill. So an example for this is the Google for Education Certified Educator Badge. They don't call that a micro-credential, and there may be some differences, but essentially a micro-credential is the same sort of thing, that you would demonstrate your skills at a particular teaching a particular part of the teaching repertoire, and you would be certified in your ability to do that. You can see some of the buzzwords there in the graphic. They are flexible. They are done when teachers want, how they want. They're done on demand. They're personalized. You get to choose the micro-credentials you apply for and gain credit in. And you can see the other adjectives there. We're going to look at some of these specifically.
Yeah, and really micro-credentials are therefore a kind of way of documenting and proving a performance assessment, if you will, of that you have a particular skill. So when we're talking about performance assessment micro-credentials, we're talking about a performance assessment way to show how good you are at performance assessment.
Right. It's that makes this both kind of clever and synergistic, but also a little bit confusing. That we're actually now doing performance micro-credentials. But as we continue, I think it'll be more clear. Let's look at some specifics around performance assessment. This is a graphic that shows the Center for Collaborative Education, which is a nationwide group that writes and does work around performance assessment. Their model for performance assessment, which include these 6 qualities in circles you see. They'll sound familiar to any JCPS teacher, especially aligning to 21st century learning targets, our success skills, resulting in original product or solution, or our backpack artifact, and then even things like culturally fair and responsive for our equity work, and success criteria, and open-ended and relevant, as in authentic to kids.
Hey, Justin, there's a quick question in the chat. Elaine Aberneth asked, is this just a JCPS platform or program? She's never heard of this until her JCPS days.
Good question. No, it's not. This is a nationwide program that it's a nationwide platform hosted by hosted by Digital Promise. And we'll look at the platform in about 2 slides, and we'll get in and take a look. But these are micro-credentials that are created by universities, created by school districts, created by the NEA, created by independent organizations like CCE and Envisions for school improvement. It's a pretty broad-based clearinghouse for all sorts of different credentialing programs.
Yeah, there are hundreds and hundreds of things there, and it's international. And the ones we'll be looking up close and personal, at least a smidge of today, are the ones that are by the Center for Collaborative Education, or CCE, but they're housed on the Digital Promise, or in the Digital Promise warehouse.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go quickly through this. We'll get to the micro-credential stuff. So performance assessment, that's what this is about. Designing these kind of learning experiences for kids where they can make backpack artifacts. Commonly, we use this in JCPS to think about it. First, in the skills and standards, you've got these elements of quality assessment. In the end, they're going to create products or solutions outlined to success criteria. And then through the middle, teachers can attend to, is it fair and culturally responsive? Does it require application and transfer? Let's take a look now at this. So that's performance assessment. Now we're going to go to the micro-credential part. This is the Digital Promise website, and what you're looking at here are the 12 micro-credentials that focus on performance assessment in the classroom. Advanced performance assessment, basic, a performance assessment community, and performance assessment for equity. If we click on, for example, basic performance assessment design, what we'll see is some components, including a description of your task, resources, which link to templates, protocols, documentation, some of which you will fill out specifically and submit as evidence of your skill, and some of which is just for reference, some boxes expecting you to describe the performance assessment you've planned, a place to upload your evidence. This is very much like backpack evidence in that it is authentic, it's from your context, and it's expected to prove a skill. So you'll upload your evidence, and then you'll reflect on the process. Well, before we, let's back up to these 12 again. If we click on this, we can see that there are many different types of micro-credentials, and not all of them have to do with performance assessment. Oh, why would they list something that doesn't exist? Let's look at this one. Oh, that's
they must. It's just, yeah, it's because they're not all organizations. There you go.
Search for all of everything, and you'll get credential after credential on all sorts of different skills, including classroom culture, collaboration in the classroom, formative assessments, learner engagement. Each of these were coming from different organizations. You can see this comes from North Carolina State, and also requiring different kinds of evidence, but all of them resulting in a teacher earning a digital badge to prove their ability to do these skills in a classroom.
Yeah, and so let's talk just for 1 second about, a credential. Let's say it's a master's degree, is a large-scale credential. The reason these are micro credentials are because they're just one niche or one component of what a teacher might have or show in their repertoire. But you put several of them together, we call that a stack. So each one of these badges are really a micro credential. And you'll see it's not just that you got a badge. That badge, when you go into it, as we've just shown you, really reflects that you have demonstrated a competency by providing evidence of that from the real world of your classroom or whatever that you then given to upload to people. And if you put several of them together, you'd be able to say, look, I have earned a certain degree or level of competency in a particular kind of skill that's needed to be a good teacher.
I even
really
like
what this is.
So like I like the just that basic PA design there. You've got 3 and you've got one stacked on top of the other, and that's just the collector in me is like, man, that's pretty neat that you've got like that. It's just a great visual there. Like, look, I'm just stacking skills. So I like how you differentiated there, and you said that this is just one part of it. You're stacking those micro credentials. So yes, excellent point.
Yeah, and those, by the way, then become a currency. What the reason this has become, it's a new kind of language, but instead of seat time as your way of saying, hey, I'm good at something because I did this many hours in it. Well, we still don't know, did you get it? Did you demonstrate it? We have much better way of saying, no, you actually had to perform something, a performance assessment, right?
Yep.
To be able to show that you have something. But what's nice about this is that since this is kind of a uniform standard across the world that's developing, we're hoping that here in JCPS, it can become one way that a professional educator can start to show what they're good at. And then people could even be recognized for that. Or maybe you'll be allowed to do PDs on it because you're an expert, or your building principal wants to hire you for a new position for that. That's why we hope that these micro credentials will have some value, not only in what they show or that you have as a teacher, but how you can use them to keep moving forward as a professional leader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, professionally, these 3, the basic performance assessment design stack, is the most exciting because if I'm planning for backpack quality evidence for my students to make in class, these 3 directly apply to how do I do that better. And so while I'm reading and doing the work these expect me to do to earn the credential, I'm also doing the work I already need to do in my classroom to give my kids the chance to demonstrate their learning in authentic ways. So it's kind of like a 2 one seed.
Just a little quirk on this site, just so people know, while these are shown as stacked, and we normally think of things like left to right and down and all of that, these happen to be organized in alphabetical order. So when Justin, for example, said of this stack that is showing basic performance assessment design, it's probably the middle one that you would start with performance assessment design. Then you'd work to the one on the left, competency-based rubric design, then performance assessment validation. But because they're organized alphabetically, it kind of puts them out of order.
Yeah, we'll look at two different ways a teacher has approached earning all three of these micro-credentials, and none of them go in the order you see them. That's right. So there are hundreds of micro-credentials, but the stacks that we are focused on specifically here in JCPS because of our backpack work are the basic performance assessment design stack, the advanced performance assessment design stack, the building a performance assessment community, and the equity and performance assessment stack. They all relate really closely to what we're doing. Yeah.
Right. And that performance assessment community is especially good once you've gotten the first two, if you're like an instructional coach or something, when you're then trying to get those nuanced skills, not that you can just do it in the classroom, but you can help other educators to do it.
These are also, even though there's a good structure and organization to them, they're also very flexible and personalizable. As in, you can go through and pick one out of the performance assessment community that seems applicable to you, earn that one single micro-credential alone, and be done with it. You could earn the stack, or you can earn all different ones throughout the stacks. It's the pathway you take is up to you, and it really depends on your professional context. What skills do you need? And sometimes it depends on what you already have. A lot of teachers find ones that would simply certify the skills they already have. They upload the evidence, they do the reflections, and they get PD credit for the skills for proving they have these skills that they use every day.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Justin, because a lot of times folks think you have to have a big training before things, and then you're just going to be, tested over what you learn in the training. But what this presumes is that you already have some skills. You're just bringing your evidence to show what you already have in a lot of cases. In an area where you might need some more learning, however, these particular micro-credentials do provide you resources where you can kind of self-educate or work with others if you're doing it together, collaborate to get up to speed for something that you might not already be qualified for.
That's correct. They include articles and things like that. All right, moving on. This is the way that one teacher approached earning these three micro-credentials in her classroom in the past year. She did if you look at the bottom, you'll see two arrows, one for performance assessment number 1. We call them often like backpack project or something. As the students did that first performance assessment, created evidence for their backpacks, the teacher collected evidence throughout the process of of her planning, of the instructions she gave the students, of the evidence the students made, and she uploaded that and earned the first micro-credential, basic performance assessment design. Once she was done with one, the kids upload their evidence to the backpack, and later in the year she goes to performance assessment 2, in which she focuses specifically on the evidence you see here, the college and career ready standards, and then she made another rubric and has now 3 rubrics, and then she validated her performance assessment using their protocol, and she uploaded this evidence as the kids did performance assessment number 2. Here the kids upload their backpack evidence. Here the teacher uploads her evidence to earn her micro-credentials for that. So through 2 backpack projects, teacher earns 3 micro-credentials throughout the same process.
So it's very typical that the teacher will show some of the evidence of what they did or created as the evidence, and then also show some bits and pieces of student learning evidence to show how it was followed through with students. And all of those things would be things they would have normally done in the real scope of their job. So it wasn't doing them just to get this micro-credential. It was things that they may already be doing, but paying attention to the micro-credential so that they could then show those different components. And that way, we hope this is not doing something extra, but doing something this intentionally to show these things. And it will help you then not do something beyond your job, but it's a way of doing your job and showing and using this stuff on your job to show that you do it well.
That's right. It gives you a little structure and something to use in your PLC as some way to organize your work so that it's higher quality. This is the second way. This teacher was ambitious. She just took one single performance assessment for her kids, and she just meticulously collected all the information and evidence she needed to earn all 3 micro-credentials in one performance assessment. These 2 illustrations are just to show that these are flexible, that they can blend into your regular classroom work, and that you can choose how to best get the evidence that you need to earn the micro-credentials.
And mostly, if you look at the very right of this, what you really are doing is taking all the stuff on the left, which are different evidence points, and making sure that you, number one, upload it so that a person who's a scorer or judge can see it. And then you put your reflections on it. And those reflections are helpful, not just how you felt about it, but how you're helping the scorer to understand what you use what piece of evidence for to show what part. And you can use, by the way, like 1 or 2 things to show several things. You don't have to have something discrete for each section.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. This is a overall big picture planner that is provided in some of these performance assessment micro-credentials, just so you can see the 3-column format. The first column is the learning targets. The second column is what the activities will be that lead up to. The third column, the evidence students will create, just to help you align it. I always think it's neat how similar this is to this, our own 3-column format. It just goes to show how fundamental these 3 concepts are in lesson experience, in learning experience design, that there's a purpose, students go through a process, and there's some evidence at the end that aligns to that first purpose. And this is a more in-depth planning template that you'll probably see in many of these micro-credential performance assessment micro-credentials. And it just asks for specifics around what the evidence will look like in the end, what the learning goals are in terms of standards and in terms of 21st century skills, what's your essential question, and things like that.
What I think is nice about all 3 of those things, and they are different slightly, but they really are helpful for us in this new day of saying that this is not standards alone in terms of our targets, but it's standards plus assessed skills plus things related to learner voice, choice, or agency that we can all put in together instead of doing them all separately or after the fact. How do we conceive of the thing better to begin with all of those things integrated, and then follow it more authentically through to an outcome that is a demonstration of learning versus just measuring of learning?
Mm-hmm. We're going back to this slide because I think that the expectations around the performance assessments that these micro-credentials describe are pretty high. They expect both alignment to learning targets and 21st century skills and it being open-ended and relevant to the real world. If you think about that open-endedness to a performance assessment, that can be challenging for teachers, for me as a teacher anyway, to think about sometimes. How can I make sure that the kids are really involved and they're helping to initiate the work, that they drive the process and they create a product that they feel meaningfully connects to the problem they identified in the first. So it's a pretty high standard for performance assessment, but it's a good one and it's well supported in the micro-credentials.
And the thing I think is kind of interesting, is that whether this is like the military or something, when you think of a general that has all these different little buttons or stars or something on them, those are not just decorative things. Those represent something that was an experience or an attribute that they were able to develop and share, that they got something for. And that's what these end up kind of being like. Or if nationally board certified teachers, that's certainly a huge credential, right? What these are like that, but just in micro. And you can start to assemble these in a way that show some of your strengths and ways that you, have particular specialties that you may be particularly good at.
That's correct. Right. All right. So why this now? Well, it's because we're expecting kids to upload authentic evidence, and we'd like teachers to upload authentic evidence too. Authentic demonstrations of learning for all learners. And at the center of it all is not anything on a computer, but what happens in your classroom, the actual performance assessment in the classroom happening in real life, the evidence of which is then taken and uploaded digitally in two different ways.
Yeah, sometimes people confuse this or get this notion that since you're uploading them on the computer, this is like online learning. But it really is not. It's really about real world learning and simply finding ways to, whether you did this as a document or a PDF or a video or things that you upload to just show you have these skills. That is the online part of it, but it's not, you get all your learning through it. No, this is different.
Yeah, most of the work happens in the classroom. It's the real work we do every day.
And collaboratively, by the way, with your peers. This doesn't always have to be. In fact, it's best when you may have your PLC or your grade level team or something do some of these things together in ways that each of you may have an individual thing, but also a team-based way that you want to show something or work on some area. And when you do them together, it's quite beneficial to your own growth and crosstalk with each other.
That's right. Another reason we think this is a promising opportunity is because of time. We can sit through hours of PD and then go do our work, which is planning for authentic learning, or we can combine the two. We can plan for authentic learning in addition to earning our PD credit when we earn our micro-credentials doing the work that we're already set out to do. So it's to use an overused word, it's a bit of a synergy here. It's an overlap or a win-win. And then finally, we have some links to other places, to the bank itself. Here are those micro-credentials on Digital Promise, among hundreds of others, articles on performance assessment. And NEA has a bank of micro-credentials as well. So feel free to go during this NTI time. You may have a little extra time at the computer, go through, take a look, see what's out there in the wide world, and you might, at the beginning of next year, think to give it a shot and earn a micro-credential or two.
Exciting. All right.
That's right.
All right. Anything else, guys?
I think that's about it.
All right. Perfect. All right. So thank you guys for joining us today. We always love it when the Deeper Learning team gets on. They always bring an amazing amount of resources. Did you guys see Christy Mudd's session yesterday?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So she's a valuable addition to your team. So man, Justin, look at that beard, man. Yeah. Awesome.
He's putting us to shame.
He really is. I need to, yes. You and Matt Bolka, man. Like,
I try to have
need some pointers.
More kempt look.
There, there you go. All right. See you guys later. Thanks for joining. All right. So we are taking a 12 o'clock to 12:30 break, and we have got at 12:30 competency-based education with Kim Linkhart, Noah Klein, and Nancy Chiara. So a great group of educators there. And Stephen Durham, my Zone 3 partner, he'll be taking over for the afternoon. So join him. And listen, 1 o'clock session is going to be really good. So stay tuned for that as well. Badging for student success. All right. So bye, guys. Thank you for joining us this morning. And I'm Russ Hockenberry, and I'm out.